Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast. Episode 140. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I am Sean Whalen, Dr. Norge on the Comics Forums, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Jim. Don't be so sad, Norge. I'll try to overlook that you led a chorus for my execution. So says the sensei of the What Not Segulin.
How's it going, eh?
Had to pull one from Clarion.
Yeah.
This episode, we're going to be chatting about Seven Soldiers, Volume 3. We're going to do our first of our two-part discussion on that. We're going to do the first 4 issues of the 7. And then we're going to also finish up our interview with Freddie Williams II, where we were talking about his work on Robin. And you and I are going to do a quick little Speeding Bullets segment about a few different things, particularly the media right now, like the Brave and the Bold cartoon that came out, and then we'll talk about the game, Mortal Kombat versus the DCU. Just a few things like that that are DC-related. Smallville, I'd like to chat a little bit about casually, because there's been some interesting episodes of that. And we can talk about some of the themes this season that have been on that. So we'll do that in Speeding Bullets for this episode. And we'll have some listener voicemails and some fun stuff like that. So we are, as always, proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. We're continuing to support the Hero Initiative. If you want some information on the Hero Initiative, it's www.heroinitiative.org or call 310-909-7809. It's really a chance for us to help yesterday's creators who are in need for financial support and things like that, which it's really a chance to give back to those people who've laid the foundations for the comics we are enjoying today. And RagingBullets.com has a handy-dandy link to it. So for our sponsors for this episode are DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Batman and the Outsiders, the Snare trade paperback. You and I talked a lot about how much we really enjoyed Chuck Dixon's run, and this collects issues 6 through 10. And the artwork on that series was stunning as well. And
yeah, it was a really good read, and it was really enjoyable.
And it was nice because it definitely has more of a darker tone to your like Justice League and things like that. For people who enjoyed the regular Outsiders series, I'd highly recommend picking this up. And the stories are very self-contained in them in the sense that, you know, if you pick up this Batman and the Outsiders, you don't need to have read anything beforehand to enjoy it. So it's really good. The artwork, though, was stunning. It was like, ooh, really, really a good book. So it's regularly $14.99, 40% off, only $8.99. Green Arrow Black Canary number 16. It's Andrew Kreisberg, who is the new, and I hope I didn't butcher the name, but he's the new writer on the series. But the same art team, you know, of Mike Norton and Joe Rubinstein. And it's really, this issue features Merlin, the Black Archer. The deadly assassin comes back into the lives of Green Arrow and Black Canary just when they've gotten their lives back on track. But if the heroes can defeat their archenemy, could that just open the gates to more, possibly worse evil in their lives? Regularly $2.99, 40% off, only $1.79. And we're both big fans of Green Arrow and Black Canary.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. You know, I love the current run, past run, current run, and everything going on with that. So I was a little, I don't know, but
the new writer,
yeah, I always get a little nervous because I am more writer focused. So, but it's let's give her a shot. We got to see what's going on. We're still going to get the great artwork we're getting now, so I'm very happy with that. So.
Yeah, in issue 14, we're going to be talking about, it's either going to be next week or the week after. We've got an interview set up that we're trying to work out. So it's either going to be in the next 2 weeks. We're going to talk about the last issue of the Judd Winnick run. And we've got, hopefully, colorist joining us from that particular book that I'd like to really talk about what's been going on in that series. So that'll be fun. Whatever your shipping preferences, bag and boarding preferences, DCBService.com accommodates your collecting needs. Don't forget our in-stock trades book of the month is Doom Patrol Volume 2, Painting Lady Paris. And that's going to be in 2 weeks. We're going to start talking about that. Written by Grant Morrison with art by Richard Case and John Nyberg. Collects issues 26 to 34 of Grant Morrison's groundbreaking run on Doom Patrol. This one introduces the Brotherhood of Dada, the only team of superfoes ever strange enough to rival the Doom Patrol itself, as well as the menace of the D-Creator and the return of Monsieur Mala and the Brain from the original Brotherhood of Evil. And it's regularly $19.95, 47% off, because they're supporting us, only $10.57.
Cool.
And Jim, what we're going to do, because you and I, with between various work issues and all that, we were actually behind one book of the month. We are going to do the next one. It's going to be a listener pick as well. And then we'll jump to Seven Soldiers Volume 4. So we're going to do another listener one after this just to kind of mix it up a little bit and get another listener involved. Because I want to keep that regular and steady. So we'll go to the listeners next and then back to us. So good stuff. Anyway, thanks again for supporting us, DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. We want to thank all of you for continuing to support us with Podcast Alley, Pop Current, iTunes reviews, going on forums, websites, blogs, popping into the comic shop and telling somebody about us. Really, podcasting is one of those things, Jim and I don't make money off of this. We have sponsors for the show that help, with our costs as far as for putting on this show, and we're not looking to. And it's one of the nice things about this medium is that we rely heavily on our listeners. It's a community-based thing. Anything you guys are doing to let people know about us, that's a great way to show that you appreciate the show. We really, really do appreciate it. So thank you for taking time to do any of that. Like I said, even if you just bump into somebody and say, hey, listen to this, it helps us all out. So thanks for that. Visit RagingBullets.com to check out show news updates, listener-generated content such as Life in the Gutter, a regular blog that's fantastic, Bulleteer Rants. We got Mart's blog up there, the listener rants section from the forum. If you don't go to the forum, you got to check this out because there's a lot of listeners who just weekly are throwing their thoughts up on books that they're reading and just current things that are going on at DC. So that's definitely a great place to see what our listeners are thinking about what's going on today. So that's RagingBullets.com. Don't forget about our contest, RagingContest@gmail.com. We want you to participate in the show. I've got a whole bunch of entries that I'm getting together for the next run where we're going to be picking somebody to pick our next trade. So I'm really excited to see what the listeners are going to pick this time around because Doom Patrol is something you and I haven't read, that Grant Morrison run. So I'm looking to see if it's something maybe an old favorite or if it's going to be something new that neither you and I have read. So that's kind of a fun thing. I like the aspect that we don't know what we're going to be talking about.
It's a grand mystery.
Yeah. So I do like that kind of interaction. We've got a voicemail line, and we love having you a part of it, 440-388-4434. So feel free to call it every week because we're definitely pulling those comments in. I like having that interactivity. It's quick and easy for us, but it's a great way to get you and your voice on the show. We are an audio medium, so I tend to go to the voicemails more now because of the fact that it's a chance for you to get your voice on the show, to be a part of it. Don't worry about what you sound like or anything like that. We both sound like goofs, so come and join us.
You too can sound like an idiot. Come on.
That's right, yeah. Come with us. And Jim, what kind of a podcast are we?
The Raging Bullets podcast is a spoiler show with plotline, story, twist, whatnot, what-ish, and we go in depth into the books we review on the show. So if you haven't read them, beware, we're a spoiler show, and you can come back later on, I
had to turn off my mic for a little bit because the sound that I was making. And I needed a towel afterwards, but I'm all right now. That was funny, actually. I did not expect that. I expected your typical. I didn't realize you had prepared something.
That's, as I always say, you never know when it's going to come.
I've got to say this. You are a lot more musical than I ever realized.
If only I could sing, it'd be better.
In all kidding aside, I actually really liked that one.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it was very pleasant because it came out of nowhere. I didn't expect it. I really liked that.
There have been a couple suggestions on the forum. When I was working on one of the suggestions, I was having...
Oh, this was your Christmas album one.
This is my Christmas album one.
You did catch that one.
Yes, with the little drummer boy, and I was working on it, but I kept having problems with the rhythm and the beat of putting that into Little Drummer Boy.
It wasn't. You know what? It's like it wasn't made to be a spoiler warning.
Right. It's Plus, you needed the pump, pump, pump. You need the drum and all that, and so I wasn't about to bring in a little snare drum with me, though. If you ever see me carrying a snare drum, you'll know what I'm planning.
All right, on that note, let's get back into our interview with Freddie E. Williams II. This is part 2 of it, so we'll start off with that.
Holy coal in a donut!
When Tim's going through the sequence about scratching the paint job, she's always cute. I love that was his first thought.
Well, you kind of see just the kid in Tim. He's sitting back. He's kind of chilling. He's just like boom, boom, boom. Fires off the electric thing. She attacks, hits her with some juice, pops up the rubber, the Gatling guns with the rubber bullets, and he's sitting back here and he's chatting with Officer Harper throughout this. We're seeing that the kid in Tim mished with the hero. So I was like, we're still seeing the Tim Drake, that kid that I like, but we are seeing him increase his role and kind of step up and be more of an adult-type superhero. So this sequencing, plus he's got his inner dialogue that he's going through, and he's, okay, let's see what we got here type of, I don't know, it kind of like you seeing just the growing up and the maturing of Tim throughout this whole story arc, especially in this sequencing here. We go through everything where he's getting ready to drop everybody, and that's when it kind of like goes back to where it sees Red Robin and we see Scarab just overlooking everything, and it kind of like brings the event to a little bit more serious note. Lets you know, okay, this isn't going to be all fun and games. Tim isn't going to be able to take down everybody without getting out of the car. There is some stuff coming here, and it was a nice just forewarning, nice kind of like setup of what's going to be coming in the future issues, because I was eating it up. It was like visually just like a fun read, but it kind of like if we were watching a movie, right at that point in time, we would have had the dun 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 music just start kicking in. There would have been that little bit, let you know, okay, get ready, it's about to hit the fan. So I was like,
panel I want to comment on that I really appreciated was the Officer Harper at Home panel. Because it's funny how the comfort and mode of him calling her cell phone, realizing that he can contact her wherever she's at, but she's at home right now. She's, off the clock and all that stuff, kicking back and relaxing. But the comfort level of her conversation, it's clear she's like watching television, just kind of kicking back, relaxing at this point. The comfort level she has with him now shows, again, the growth that this character has had since we first initially saw her introduced. And she's been around a while now. So this is a character that has been pretty established at this point, and their relationship would be stronger now.
Well, she was 1 year later.
Right.
And I like that. She first came in that first sequence when she's dealing with Batman, it was like, and even her first sequence with Robin where he's like, hey, it's cool, take it easy, kind of like just that opening of it, and you just see it develop to what it is. Wow.
But seeing her in such a comfortable setting, it was funny how the mood and the tone of her sitting in her apartment really set for me, not that she was comfortable, but their relationship was comfortable. I connected that in a very different way than you would think. You think I'd be looking at her apartment and saying, wow, she looks really relaxed right now. I didn't. I connected it to their relationship, it was kind of interesting to me that panel hit me that way versus, just her being cozy. I don't know. It was just kind of, I thought it was interesting.
No, I think that works well. And she was introduced in 1 year later before I had come on to Robin, but not much before I came on to Robin. So I've had a lot of background with her. She showed up several times in my first run, so I feel like I know her pretty well as well. And I'm glad that they have a good relationship. And what you were describing earlier as, I was perceiving and enjoy the idea of them having, a bit of, it's not sexual tension necessarily because you don't think that they'll have sex, but it's a sexual tension because of, just the different genders or whatever. And I think that is evident. He has her personal cell phone number that he can, contact her whenever she's off the clock and sitting there in her robe after having probably taken a long bath or something like that. So, yeah, I like it as well. And it's cool, actually, that you picked up on, or in a way, there's a subtext there that I don't think I know I didn't intend, and I don't know if Fabian did or not, but her comfort level shows their comfort level. I think that's pretty cool.
It's just the way it hit me, and it's funny. I think that that's one of the strengths of good comics. We've talked about this before when we've had you on. I think that a really good comic, and it's really good artwork, is comes to life in such a way. Your imagination takes you places that go beyond what was intended in the storytelling, and I think that is, to me, the strength of this marriage of dialogue and visual, and I think that you get something very special from that type of relationship, and this is a great example of that, I thought. And it's one of the things I like about this book a great deal, is that I tend to think about it a lot after I'm done reading it.
Awesome.
Part of the mystery for me, and one of the things I've really enjoyed about this book, was watching when Red Robin would appear and how he would react. I have absolutely really, and I'm continuing to adore this storyline and use of perspective. Because now I love seeing I loved being in the Batmobile with Tim, because it was so cool to see the dashboard with all the gadgets and gizmos and everything. I'm like, what can I touch? Can I get in there and do that? But then now we're seeing, from the villain, the lead villain in this piece, or whatever Red Robin is, or turns out to be in this whole thing, as far as his relationship with Tim. Because even that, it's the general, and you can't help but I mean, that's been leading to that all along. But one of the things that is interesting to me now is, what does this mean? What is the general's overall goal? What is it going to mean when these two butt heads? And that's the continuing thing that I'm really enjoying about this is, where are we going to go from here? Is this going to be a reoccurring character? Is this going to be a character where there's a definitive ending with him, and then, we're just going to deal with Stephanie? Or are we going to continue to deal with both? Because they both have very different motivations in dealing with Tim. And I'm loving watching from different perspectives, trying to figure out. At one point in time, I thought Scarab was Stephanie. And, as I was trying to figure this out, and then, obviously this issue when I saw the two of them butting heads at that point, and Stephanie reveals that, her relationship with Scarab there, with the bullets and everything, and saying that, she's not supposed to be using live bullets on, people or anything like that. You get to see that there's a twist there in her dynamic in this whole thing. And I'm like I said, I'm just eating this up. It's just it's very cool.
And it's funny, even as we're getting more answers, there's still more questions, because the big question that's going through my head, it's how did he find out about Red Robin? Did he just come up with the idea and it just happens to be coincidence? Or did he find, the costume that Jason discarded, at the end of, Countdown? It's how, why, and it was just even as we're going to get more answers and more figure out the mystery, there will still be more of a mystery left for us to uncover. So, this is a cool character.
Which fits the detective nature of Tim.
Yeah.
That's one of the things. I keep wanting to say Tim Drake.
Hey, I'll
keep referring to him as both ways. One other thing I want to talk about, because I loved so much the visuals of the guns coming out of there, and I loved how we get to see Tim using Batman's tools in a way that perhaps even Batman wouldn't be comfortable with. And that's not to say that Tim is more extreme or anything like that. It's just showing that this is not the same guy. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to see him being a carbon copy clone of Bruce. Part of the fun of Tim, when we see him interact with an Officer Harper, things like that, is even in this overwhelmingly dark situation, we're still reminded at times this is Tim. We see these cool sequences where he's using these guns and this really cool visual look where he's, trying to do everything he can to avoid getting out of the Batmobile because he wants to keep the mystique going. The whole point of the Batmobile being there is that he's trying to make them think it's Bruce. And I love that he's pulling out everything but the kitchen sink to do that. Yeah. And this visual sequence worked so well for me because of that. Because I felt like, boy, this kid's trying to do everything he can to not get out of the vehicle. And how real is that? I would be doing that too. You want them to think you're Batman.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. I guess one of the things he could have done was drive at him at 50 miles an hour and then skid the Batmobile sideways and just knock over everyone and run them over and shit. Be like, if you just knock them down, that'd be funny.
But you know what? And the one reason, why Tim wouldn't have done that?
Oh, because people could get seriously hurt. I just think it would be funny to see.
Right, exactly. The second you said it, and I know you were joking around when you were saying it, but it tells you how much my head's in the zone in this book. I'm already thinking, would Tim do that? So that's how hooked you guys have got me into this whole thing. I'm already rationalizing even when you're joking.
Dude, it's a joke. Relax. Calm down. But yeah, we've always talked about, even in the past issues with Tim's doesn't want to go against the code, the no-kill code. And even the previous issue when he was dealing with Ragman, and just when he first dealt with Jason Todd, and Todd saying, "Hey, we use the gangs against him. We gotta have order." And he's like, "No, we don't break the code." And once again, Scarab comes in. She's flying in, firing live rounds, and Tim's like, "That's it. I gotta take her down." And that's the final piece, really, if you will, that gets him out of the car because we now have a hostile threat. We now have a life-threatening threat to people, and I got to do the hero thing.
Yeah, definitely. And, Scarab, because she could actually, hopefully those people will have been able to take care of in time that they're, get medical attention, but just even being witness to people being gunned down because they have, basically no chance against her. So, yeah, it's time to act.
Freddie, where did the idea come from for the ejection windshield? I really liked that because of the design of the car and how big the windshield is versus even the rooftop and the location of the windshield with the way it's designed. Was that something you came up with? Was that something that was part of the original design? I don't remember seeing that before, and I really enjoyed that sequence where Tim popped out.
It is exactly as you just described it. Like, was in the script, it was just written that he used the ejection seat, but I couldn't see a way that he would easily fit through the roof as an ejection seat. So I just made it where, the windshield folded forward as well. So it came out of just necessity of it. Fabian didn't just specify it in the script, but I just took a liberty with it because it just made sense. But thank you.
Well, I appreciated that because it was something that I noticed that I was like, the second I saw it, I'm like, I don't remember ever seeing that before. And maybe it's been done somewhere, I don't know. This for me was the first time I've ever seen this in this format. I've seen like lots of different versions of ejection seats in cars. But when I looked at that windshield and the size of it, I actually found myself looking right back at the sequence with Scarabs flying over the vehicle and looking back. Wow, no wonder why you would do that. The windshield, the way that it's tilted in the design of the Batmobile, where the seats would be, the largest opening that would enable anybody who would happen to be sitting in either the driver or the passenger seat to get out, maybe even both to be able to get out at the same time, would have to be that front windshield via location. And it looked really visually very cool.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, it's like attention to detail like that I do appreciate with your art. Like earlier when we saw the cops shooting, you see some of the shell casings come out. It's the little stuff like that I notice. It's really cool, and it's definitely appreciated, man.
Well, thank you very much. Whenever I'm drawing for hours at a time, I think there's a lot of comic book artists that do this or whatever, but you're drawing for hours at a time. That at least for me, I like to get in and explore the mentality of the characters. And I mean, that doesn't so much apply with the ejection of cartridges whenever someone's shooting the gun, but it helps as far as me picturing it as a movie or whatever. It comes from maybe even attempting to write, since I've done some writing, trying to write a scene like that, I would probably include a detail like that. Like actually, if it was me writing it, it would probably even describe the sound that the shells make whenever they hit the ground or something, depending on if I was writing a novel or something like that. But cool. I'm glad that it adds something to the story, because really I'm never sure if somebody's going to pick up or even really care, even if they do happen to pick it up, whether it's going to matter that they would see something like that. So it's cool that that you guys at least, and it sounds like you guys are into and I know that you guys have been a fan of the character and the series for whether I was on it or not, but it's cool that you guys are engrossed in it and that you guys really appreciate and pay really close attention to comics in general.
I'm a big fan of James Bond too, so anytime you've got like gadgets and gizmos and things like that work in cool and unique ways, but then it's some of them can be like really over the top in the sense that you're like, well, you said it before. I like that you took the time to analyze and say, well, where would it make sense? And when I saw that, I actually went back. I'm like, that looks really cool and it makes sense to me. So for me, when I go back, I read a book the first time. And if I really got a lot of enjoyment out of it, I'll go through with a second look through and really just pay attention to, forget the dialogue, I'll look at the art at that point. Then, because, I usually spent time looking at the dialogue and the art together for the story the first time around. And I'll really look for little nuances in the art to catch tiny details like that, because it's fun to do that. And then, I'll go back through the third time for, like, things with the dialogue that I'm like, okay, I really want to kind of hone in on this now. And it was one of those things the second time through when I was looking through it, I'm like, oh, that is so neat. This is actually leading to me to kind of a question on it. It's kind of an obvious question, or kind of the answer is almost kind of obvious. I feel like, I think with artists and writers and things like that, you hit a point with a character or maybe a story where you're kind of like, I've said everything I want to say with this character. I really feel like with your return to Robin, that you have had a lot that you've wanted to continue saying in your artwork about Robin and in his universe, and a lot of things that you've wanted to do with Robin. Would I be right in saying that? Because it feels like there's a lot of energy here. Like you're excited to be working on this book and to be doing new things with him and playing with new toys. Am I accurate in that?
Oh, definitely. And the types of things that I'm wanting to, hopefully I have been and want to continue in emphasizing is in artwork, because it fits in my artwork, because it fits Robin. I want to increase the amount of mood with shadow and texture and that sort of thing. and I wanted to also kind of crack down on myself with trying to keep Robin a little more of a consistent age, which is supposed to be 17 or 18 now, as opposed to whenever I was looking. The first thing that I did before I started doing any work on Robin on 177 was I went through every issue of my first run, and if I saw a face that I think I did well, I copied, just the face and put it in a file. And then if I did I would find faces that I thought I did horribly on. I would put that in a different file. And so I made a file called the yes file and then one called the no file, so that if I was, if I found myself deviating too far from what I think that Tim should look like, I could kind of rein myself back in. So it was like, do this, but don't do this. That's another aspect of it. And then also some different experiments in inking and that sort of thing, and also consistency with backgrounds. And sometimes in the first run, depending on deadlines, I would go pretty extensive on some of the backgrounds, and then leave some other backgrounds pretty sparse. I'm trying to be mindful of that sort of thing. And just in general, trying to play with, shapes of his cape, and whenever he's using a gadget, try to do my own spin on the gadgets, like even just the shape of the little hand launchers that shoot out the grapple hooks, and then in issue 180, even like in the formation of how the smoke looks like whenever they fire the little, when they fire the gun to shoot out the grapple hook. So it's all stuff like that, even like the shape of his hair and the different detailing in it, and I don't know. I could go on and on because there's a lot of little stuff that I've been fixating on, but some of the bigger ones are the ones that I just mentioned.
I like details like, and I've mentioned this. We were talking to Jamal Eigel. It was something I noticed in his work, and I'm noticing it in yours too. Like functional gloves and functional boots where they look like they were slipped on, where they're not like painted on to them, if that makes sense. It's I like tiny little things like that, because you can imagine them in the cave, putting them on to suit up and that type of thing. You don't have to see it. You get that in your head from seeing them out in the field wearing them, because you see it in Stephanie. Her boots look like they're boots that could be slipped on. I'm watching him with his gloves in this particular sequence. You're seeing you can actually see where the suit goes into the glove, and where you could put your thumb in to pull it up and that type of thing. It's just little tiny details, but they're functional, and it adds a reality to it that still looks just as cool as, and I don't see it painted on where it said painted on look, and I like it too. I'm not like knocking that or anything, but when I see this, it adds a different layer of realism for me, and it's something that I notice that I appreciate, and I really like that when I see those little details.
You kind of hear the creaking of the leather as they close their fist.
Yeah,
that's the stuff I get when I see make a fist, or I see Tim with like that, and I hear the kind of flutter sound of the capes when he's swooping, or like when Stephanie's here, she's crashing into Scarab to drop Scarab as she's got a bead on Robin. I hear the cape and the reaction to the wind and stuff like that.
Dude, I played Batman and Robin so much when I was a kid. I heard all those sounds. I'm not saying that it was for any effective purpose, but but I used to literally go into the garage and I'd pull on like Dad's gloves or something like that. I'd have a towel wrapped around me, running around my yard looking like a goof. But I had the time of my life doing it. But I mean, that's what it's that type of stuff. Comics are escapism. And anything that pulls me in further, or little, and they seem like such tiny things, but those details to me, they're the difference between engrossing me and pulling me into a story to where I'm a part of it, and I'm just reading it. And there's a huge difference for me, because it's, when I'm pulled in and I'm part of it, I think about it afterwards. I carry the story with me. I'm thinking about the characters and events and what's happening and what they're going to do next. I care.
Yeah,
and that is a difference.
Yeah, and on a side note, whenever you were talking about running around like a goof whenever you were a kid, there's one of my nephews who I'm really close with named Christian. For Halloween, he was Batman, and he was incredibly excited to have the costume and to wear the cape and stuff, and you could see a visual difference in his composure and how he carried himself, because when he put that suit on, he felt like he was inhabiting a character. So he was trying. I mean, he's a kid, and so he's going to pretend anyway. But it was just the way that he had, held his head, and he would, when he was standing still, he'd cross his arms, with his back arched and stuff. It was great to see that, because he's only 6. Yeah, he's 6 and about to turn 7 in January, but that just comes along with the role. So, or comes along whenever you're dressing up like that. So I know exactly what you mean. I dressed up all the time as Superman whenever I was a kid, and one of my aunts had made a cape for me, and she had embroidered the Superman's symbol on the back, and I had a pair of red galoshes and all this stuff. So, I mean, absolutely. And we, me and my cousin used to play Batman and Robin all the time, and of course, I was always Batman because I'm 10 days older than him, so we somehow that meant that I got to be Batman, Anyway, yeah, I know what you mean, and I am glad that some of the functionality comes out in the costumes and stuff, because, I don't add like a lot of wrinkles and, the folds of his elbows or his knees or anything like that, because I think that his costume doesn't make total logical sense because there's supposed to be armor underneath it, even though it's like basically tights. But stuff that, hopefully will feel a little more functional, like the wrinkles around his collar because he'd be moving his head around a lot. I always picture that texture of that as if he was, it's trash bag material is how I always picture it. I don't know if you've ever worked much with that, but if I've had to use, basically make a poor man's tarp where you take trash bags and kind of split them open and then cover the ground with it. And if you're walking on it and kind of twisting the trash bags in a certain spot, it gets those type of wrinkles. And that's what I was trying to do at his wrists and at his neck. So I'm glad that it pulls off that way.
It's funny when I do. I'm trying to think of what I was going to say now. I just completely lost my thought.
Well,
go ahead, Jim.
Well, actually, you're talking about when you were a kid dressed up in Superman. A friend of mine, I work with, had a Halloween party last weekend, and for my costume, I went as Key-Man. Now, I work for Key Bank, and so I made this superhero based on Key Bank, and I took a red Key logo on, like, this black shirt, and I had the red cape and the red domino mask, and, kind of like the shirt, and I'm walking around, and I was having a ball with it, and everyone's laughing, because they're like, Jim, this is like your normal Saturday outfit, isn't it? Because it was just, I was sitting up like, I am Key-Man, and I had the Superman I kept using the Superman pose with my arms cocked, and it was just I was having fun with it as Key-Man.
I was it was funny when he was talking about the Batman costumes. I was looking for a costume to wear to school today because I am a third grade teacher. I always dress up every year, and I enjoy that. So I saw the Batman costume there, but the Batman suit from the film is very dark and very intimidating looking, and the problem is in my role with the age group that I deal with, I didn't want to be the one coming in looking that intimidating.
You didn't want to teach your class like this.
That's right, yeah. Now, I mean, they'd be quiet, but but not in a good way.
Yeah.
So I had to. It was really hard to pass up too. So and then I went to look at Superman, but one of the substitutes who's been a long-term sub repeatedly in our building, and he's a friend of mine. He always, as his, if he's there on Halloween, he dresses up. His name is Mr. Delinsky. He dresses up as Super D. So he always wears like a Superman-styled costume. So I'm like, well, I don't want to wear that because then I'll look like him, and kind of want to do my own thing. So I went through and saw the Iron Man costume, but then the Iron Man only comes with the upper torso, and it doesn't have like the bottoms to go with it. And I'm like, I don't have any pants. I literally was getting this the day before. I was doing this yesterday. This is Halloween today. So, I was really on top of this. So, so that didn't work. Spider-Man was obviously gone. There was no Spider-Man. There was Venom. Again, go see Batman. It's an intimidating looking costume. So I can't do that. All that was left that...
Please tell me it was like strawberry shortcake.
No,
Please tell me it was strawberry shortcake.
No, I actually completely avoided the female costumes, which we could get on a whole discussion about how female costumes talk about exploitive. I mean, I was like going through... I'm like walking through the rows, and the male and female costumes are all mixed in together. And there was a whole lot of inappropriate ones that I almost picked up by accident. I went to pick up a doctor... And thank goodness I read what it said on the label, because it identified the type of doctor, and it wasn't very appropriate. It was obviously meant for an adult party. And I'll leave it at that because there might be some kids listening. So we'll leave it at that. But so I eventually come across, I'm looking for something that might be remotely kid-friendly. I pick up Gilligan. So I was Gilligan today. All right, the only thing now, the kids don't know who Gilligan is. I had to have my kids carry shipwreck signs. This is a long story that's actually going somewhere where Freddie's story went with before. One of my kids, Carlo, I had all my kids because I knew they wouldn't know who Gilligan was, and they didn't, except for 2, which makes me feel really old. 2 of them knew because their parents watched it on as a rerun. So they were kind of familiar with the character. They couldn't tell me who anybody else was either, so that's a whole other, I definitely, my concept of how hip I am is gone. It was one of those humbling days. But one of my kids, Carlo, which did give me goosebumps, was dressed up as Batman. So it took me back to my childhood. He had and he had a good, we had these plastic Batman costumes with the mask that only went on the front, and I loved it. But it wasn't a very good costume, so to speak. Now, as a kid, I wore it a lot longer than Halloween. If I had Carlos, I'd probably still be wearing it today. Because dude looked like mini Batman. He had like the whole full mask on, and the mask looked like the Christian Bale mask. I mean, he looked really good. Yeah.
Cool.
And it was one of those, it was like a fabric that came over, but it was padded underneath, so it like completely looked like it was Carlo's mouth, but completely that look. And I may had all the kids make signs because we were going as Mr. Whalen's castaways. So that way, the rest of the kids in the building understood that I would, and I held up a big sign that said, "Save us, we're shipwrecked." And I had all the kids do various help me signs, like they were trying to flag down planes or boats or things like that. So they were all themed like that. Well, Carlo was holding up a help me sign. It was the coolest thing in the world because it shows you that the Batman tone, that actually is leading back to this, the whole Batman tone was something that he was taking in. He came up to me and said, "Mr. Whalen, I can't carry this." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, I made this really cool help me sign, but he said, I'm Batman. I would be helping you."
Yes.
I'm like, "Carlo," I said, "recycle that sign." I said, and I put him in the front. He let us out.
Batman saved the day.
Yeah.
Nice.
But it's funny how, these characters and, when you put on their costumes and their suits, you want to be in there. It's fitting as we get to this really cool ending of this book where we see Spoiler come in because, Robin's being targeted and he's about to be gunned down. And, or at least I'm assuming that's what's going on because they're doing this whole thing where, I'm not sure how far right now, and that's part of the mystery that I'm still. How far is the General? How far is Scarab? How far are they trying to go here? Are they trying to kill Robin? What are they trying to do to him? And that's part of the mystery that I'm enjoying as well. I want to see, because they're obviously their modus operandi versus what Spoiler's trying to do. They mesh to a certain extent where Spoiler, out of convenience or out of necessity for what her plans are, is trying to work with them. But where it's going horribly wrong, and kind of fits Stephanie in general anyway, is the fact that, now she almost shot Robin.
Mm-hmm.
And, she swings on in, saves the day, and we see this, the ending page was, for me, I love the Red Robin costume. I don't necessarily want to see Tim adopted because I like Tim's suit.
Right.
But I agree in your theme, Jim, in the sense that you're saying that's a very, very cool outfit. And when I see Red Robin standing right there, the General, at this point, whatever, it's dressed as Red Robin, whether he's adopting that or not, I'm like, wow, is that just a dynamic suit in design and how it looks as well. And it fits because I really like Tim's suit, so I don't know that I don't want to see Tim necessarily, but I wouldn't mind seeing if the General is not adopting this as a suit, I would like to see Jason reclaim it. because of how cool it is.
Yeah, I do like Red Robin, and I do like the look of it. And when Jason first put it on, I did have the geek out moment, but I like him as Red Hood. I like him doing his thing. So it's one of those weird things where I'm like, 1 minute I'll be saying, yeah, I love this, and I kind of want. I don't know. It's
I don't see it for Tim though. That's my.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if it's storytelling wise led there, would I be upset? I don't. I mean,
Yeah.
a good story is gonna. They can sell me on anything. I'm a fish on a hook with a good story. But right now, I'm very protective of Tim. It's funny, like you've talked multiple times how you want to see Tim become Batman, and I'm not saying you're wrong for feeling that. I know I sometimes come off that way. It's more so I'm sharing passionately. This is where I'm at than contradicting you. For me, Tim has become an icon. You talk about how Dick's Nightwing, and I really like Dick Grayson as Nightwing. Tim, for me, Tim Wayne, Tim Drake, whatever you want to call him, is such a well-developed character as Robin. He's defined for me what a good Robin is and what that role brings to the Batman universe. He's essential and he's important in who he is, and that's why he has sustained a solo title for as long as he has, and why he's got such a passionate fan following. And that when you get good creative teams on it like this, the last, we had Adam Beechin and Freddie. We had Chuck Dixon's last run, which was fantastic, and we've got this run, which is fantastic. They flowed so well together because this is just when writers and artists know what to do with this guy. He's cool. He's just darn cool.
And one thing is with me and Tim, I don't want to see him become Batman, but I could see him become Batman. I do Tim Drake as Robin, and as I say, I could see him putting on the cape and cowl, but I could also see him continue on as Robin. Like, say, if something happens to Bruce, he doesn't become Batman. He stays as Robin, as Gotham's defender. There's just so many things I could see with this character and then I'm like, I don't want to see him grow old, but I do want to see him grow up. There's so many variations with this guy that I'm like, I dig this, senior high school, 17, 18-year-old thing. But then I'm like, oh, man, I remember, when he was a freshman, when he first put on the cape, when he first put on, the costume, when he first became Robin, and he had the heavy green focus in the costume, and he was using the bow staff, and, that he carved a little whistle in it so it made the tweeting sound as he was spinning it. I was just like, all these things that has been Tim, I want to see come back. I would love to see him pull back the staff, even though he's beyond using that in a way. But it's so weird with him because I'm like, I want the old, I want the new, I want what's currently out there. There's just so much about this guy that I'm like, oh, I'm digging.
And see, for me, I'd like to see future story. Like, we've seen the future version of it where he became a Batman. But that was more of a dark future, and we saw how wrong that was in Titans. Like that Robin who became Batman, that Batman was not our Batman. And it was a very dark path, and that's why Tim does not ever want to go down that path. That was something that was told in Titans with him. And I really liked that story. That was because I liked Tim's reaction afterwards that we can never let that happen. And that fit for me. I would love to see a future story told where we see him stay as Robin, but not necessarily adopting like a outfit that we've seen before, but maybe an evolution of his current outfit and seeing maybe Tim showing that he wouldn't adopt the mantle, but he would adopt elements of it, in the sense that, he would be his own protector of Gotham in the future. I agree with your tone in the sense that he would be the inheritor of the mantle in the sense that he would take over for Bruce. But does that mean that he has to wear the Batman outfit? Or can't he somehow adopt elements of it and yet still be a Robin, still be that character, and yet somehow evolve in a different way? I don't know. He's one of those characters that I think he's, like Nightwing, developed a very strong identity that separates him from Bruce. Mm-hmm. Very geeky conversation.
Yeah, I know.
But I love it.
I like the idea of him. I do like the idea of him getting older because I like seeing, actual progression in continuity. I know that it's hard for us to decide. I mean, it's just hard for the comic book industry to get past the status quo, and it's also difficult for, people to decide how fast time actually passes in comic books. For example, if someone gets on a plane at the end of one issue and then gets off at the beginning of the next, if you took timeline literally, then that means that they've been on the plane for a month, from April to May or whatever. But, so there has to be a difference in passage of time and stuff. But I like the idea of, if Tim becomes something other than Robin, but it's a progression towards where he's taking the role of Batman, I would still be satisfied. But I would be ultra satisfied, like truly satisfied, if Tim actually dons Batman's outfit in a non futuristic world where it doesn't affect the continuity or whatever. I want to see him. I would personally love to draw him becoming Batman on a regular basis. Like, he's finally made the decision that he's going to don the costume and let's do it. That would be fantastic. I don't know if they'll ever do that because they might make him into not necessarily Nightwing, but, a Nightwing type role where he's something other than a Robin, or they might just let him, still keep being Robin. I don't know. So, and honestly, I don't even know if, I'm sure that the editors have talked about different things, but I don't think it's been defined or clearly defined yet. So, we'll see. But because I'm eager just myself as a fan of the character.
I guess to me, what my concern would be there, I'm not against, and I know when I say it, it sounds like I'm against him being Batman. My problem is I don't want to see him become Batman and then he's Bruce Wayne. We call him Tim Drake, but he's Bruce Wayne again. I have no problem with him donning the cape and cowl if it's very clear that the person under the mask is somebody different. Mm-hmm. And that we see a different thinking process. We see this guy, obviously from his detective skills and what we're seeing from him, he could easily become Batman's heir and really could take over that role. And Bruce has done it in his inner dialogue and things like that, where he's talked about how Tim logically would be his heir because of, his deductive reasoning skills. And in many ways, Bruce has even admitted that Tim surpasses him in certain ways in that area. And I like that. I like that inner dialogue from Bruce when he sees that. So I don't have a problem with that because I liked things like, Batman Beyond and stuff like that, where we got to see Bruce grow old and, another Batman take over. So I think that does work. But one of the things that worked about Batman Beyond, and I think why at cons you still see people asking for a comic book of it, and I understand why, DC's not introducing that into continuity, because, that presents a whole different problem. Now you're introducing a whole different character, and I understand, what kind of roadblocks that may bring into doing that. But I think one of the things I think that series did so well is it was clearly a very different guy who was Batman. And it worked. Mm-hmm. And I think Tim could work as Batman as long as we don't try to Bruce him up. I don't know if I'm making any sense at all.
No, dude, you make sense, yeah.
That's great. Yeah, you make total sense. That's a very valid point. And I'm sure that would be, if he ever does become Batman, that would be something that the writer would have to keep very much in the forefront of their mind, not to just fall back into the same old writing. You don't want to... Basically, you would not want to be able to do a find and replace on a script and just change the word Bruce with the word Tim. You know what I'm saying? Where everything's exactly the same, the thinking process and all of his narrative captions and everything, because it would be different. So, yeah, I think you have a very good point.
Well, and Bruce could become the Alfred archetype. Not necessarily the butler, but you would imagine at that point in time that Alfred would be. I was like laughing at myself.
A million years old.
Yeah. But what I was saying at that point would be that Alfred, would be gone. That position as being the kind of confidant in the cave would be open, and that's what worked in Batman Beyond too. I wouldn't do a cookie-cutter version of that, but there'd be a logical reason to kind of move him into that role. You could keep him around and still have him be, our Bruce. So you still get that kind of vibe. And Tim reacting the way that Tim naturally would to the whole thing. I think that would be, you keep the same dynamic, but then progress it. So I would be a fan of that. I'm just really cautious on it. And I really like Bruce. I don't know, guys, is there anything else you want to hit on at this point? I mean, it's kind of...
I think we covered... we went a wide gambit here.
As always, Freddie, I want to thank you for coming on and doing Raging Bullets. You are a wonderful guest. We actually were joking around prior to recording this about how we could do like a 14-hour show, because we've literally done multiple episodes with you spinning out of topics that we've had on the show, where we've done your books, and then we've done Superman, and then we've done all kinds of stuff. So I want to thank you always for your willingness to not only come on the show, but for your willingness just to share with us and your audience who you are, because I think that's one of the nice things about having you on as a guest is every time we have you on, we get to really know a little bit more about you, and that's a true pleasure. So thank you for coming on.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me on. You guys you're into the same stuff that I am into, so I really enjoy it. And it's funny to me whenever, anytime that we get on the phone, regardless of any notes that I've made of things that I want to cover, we end up covering those things, but then about 6 or 7 times that amount. I remember when we did the Richard Donner cut of Superman 2, it being do you remember how many hours that was? Was it actually about 8 hours or something?
I think I released that as 2 episodes, didn't I?
I'm pretty sure that was a 2-episode.
Yeah, I just remember that.
You gave us, I believe, you gave us like a full work day between talking about your work and all that.
Yeah,
you really did. No, I'm not. I kid you not. It was insane.
I know that's what makes it so funny is that it didn't. Obviously, it didn't feel like work or whatever. But I just remember looking at the time, and I remember I was all of a sudden really hungry after we got off the phone, and I was like, "Why am I so hungry? Oh my God! Look what time it is." Anyway, I appreciate you guys, having me on the show and letting me ramble on and on about it. So you guys are great.
And you know what I love? We're doing just a simple wrap-up, and we go off on a tangent in the middle of the wrap-up. Dude, man, you rock. You get the show, you're a good friend, and it's always awesome.
You filthy criminals.
Our next review is going to be of Seven Soldiers of Victory, Volume 3, an in-stock trades Rage of the Month. Writer is Grant Morrison, art by Freddie E. Williams II, Fraser Irving, Pasquale Ferry, Ryan Sook, Mick Gray, Yannick Paquette, Serge Lapont, Doug Monkey, Billy Dallas Patton, Michael Baer, Dave Stewart, with colors by Dave McCaig, Nathan Eyring, Alex Sinclair, and John Calitz. Letters by Pat Brousseau, Jared K. Fletcher, Phil Balsman, Nick J. Napolitano. Peter Tomasi was the editor, Michael Siglane the associate editor, and Anton Kawasaki, editor of the collected edition. And I liked, just kicking off before we even get into talking about the issues, one thing I liked about the trade volumes in this, because I had the original issues when I originally read this series, but the trades have in the beginning of each volume what has come before.
Yeah.
And especially because you and I have spread this out, and we've been talking about these volumes every few months or so, to be able to have that kind of refresher on what's going on in the story, because there's so much going on with so many different storylines, was really, to me, a strength of the collected edition. So I felt, especially when I saw that there was an editor for the collected edition, I'm like, we should really talk about that difference in the collected edition. I enjoyed that. I don't know if that was something you found beneficial.
Yeah, definitely, found it beneficial. I read that. It was kind of cool. I did go back and I read the other volumes before. I had a little Seven Soldiers marathon where I read Volume 1, read Volume 2, and then jumped into Volume 3 notes. So it was just, I'm so much more enjoying the trade than I did when I read the individual stuff. It's weird that how many times I've read this, and not just for the notes. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm digging it. It's a really cool.
Do you think it's
flow.
due to the fact that it's in chronological order now for you?
It's in chronological order, and it's all together. And that, I think, for me, if I have to pull out the individual issues, I think that would have slowed down my reading. But as I'm just going through reading it, it seems more like it's one giant story, not 7 separate stories.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the way it was for me, too. Especially, I notice more read-throughs. I read more of the connections now than I did initially. I do think my first reading, even though I read it in release order, the way that we're supposed to, the way it was like this, I will say that I'm catching a lot more of the big story in multiple read-throughs than I did the first time around. So let's jump right on to Clarion, Part 4. Poor Clarion has made the decision to return home only to be tied to the stake for a potential burning. They refuse to believe him because of their Book of Shadows, and it's interesting that the underlying message seems to be avoid blind faith and to look at religion with a critical eye, to find your own path.
Yeah, when the cover of the Clarion issue is him tied to a stake, and I didn't actually think they were going to do it to the guy. I figured, and I should have known better, but as soon as I opened up, I'm reading, like, they're actually tying, then I saw that the cat was tied up next to him. I'm like, dang.
Poor Tickle.
I know. I'm like, man, who would tie up he's a cat, but he's not just a cat, but still.
He's a cat with an attitude. Yeah. That's a bad cat.
Yeah, well, now bad as in bad or bad as in bad?
I think it depends on the day. Because, Clarion's a bad boy, too.
Oh, yeah.
And in both kinds. It's easy to blindly follow faith or even to blindly follow a crowd. And I do think this can be taken beyond religion and applied to government and really all aspects of life. It's an interesting point that we should be open to question anything that's put in front of us. We may still decide that, following it is the best path for us, but following it then for our own reasons and beliefs, not someone else's. And I really liked, I don't know if that was what was meant in there, it doesn't matter. I like when comics make me think beyond the pages. And we talked about that in our interview with Freddie Williams when we were talking about Robin, how there are things that Robin made me think of beyond the page. When I enjoy comics and I'm really getting into the story, I find that I think beyond the page. And that's one of the things that I thought was a strength of this series, that it did this for me as well.
Dude, if that had to have been the intention, because I pulled the same thing from there. I was thinking the whole group think type process, the mob mentality, like when people are rioting and stuff like that, where you just get caught up in the moment and you're going with it. And we later see when they start getting when their head starts clearing, like, hey, sorry about that. But it's still, I could see that. Totally. If burn them, yeah, I'd be lighting the fire right along with them. I know me. It's just you would get caught up in that whole flow, especially you
burn somebody though.
You know what?
If there's a crowd doing it,
I think it's not only just the crowd; it's that whole religious side of it as well.
Really,
you got that strong faith, and strong faith is a wonderful thing. Faith can help you through your darkest times, but if you're not careful, it could also make you do, it could push you over that edge. You think about just like, over the past years, all the different, stuff that has been happening in the name of religion, in the name of God, that it's a powerful tool. And if I was caught up now, if it's just some guy jaywalking and my priest were to say burn him, I'd be like, Father, calm down a little bit, dude, he just jaywalked. But if it was something that so fundamentally went against the beliefs and just it was something
even a family member,
that would be tough. Family member, I will admit, would be tough. But I don't know if this is
a close-knit society.
But it's, like if it was, I hate to say this, but if it was one of your family members, it'd be easier on me. Now, if it was like my brother, I would have a hard time because that's my brother and I know my brother's a good guy. Mm-hmm. I would have a hard time. But if it was like, say, your brother, I'd be like, well, maybe Tommy, I don't know. I got to trust the priest on this one. Sorry, Tom, Yeah. It's that whole...
I definitely couldn't do it with a family member. I don't know if I could do it with anybody. I'm not saying it's not an issue where I'm looking at you and saying, "Geez, you're morally wrong." I don't mean it that way. I'm genuinely looking at myself versus it's not a disputing you kind of thing. So this isn't one of those things. It was an interesting question. When I was looking at this, I'm like, boy, the burning somebody at a stake kind of thing. Could I do that? Could I get charged enough to do that? I don't know.
And I'd like to think I wouldn't do it, but I do have to acknowledge that inside me there is that bit of, it's that whole I was just following orders type thing. And there's a lot of times in life when you're given that option where you do you do the right thing or you do what you're being told? And that's a hard line because the right thing isn't always the easiest thing.
You tend to have
it's a military mindset type thing where a hierarchy
where you tend to have where I don't have that kind of group wiring in me.
Yeah.
And it's not a negative thing. I don't mean it that way. It's interesting though. I didn't even think about that we're kind of wired a little bit differently in that respect. His sister's trying to kill him, which makes that, kind of an interesting discussion, rather than objectively listening to him. And, of course, Melmoth shows up at this time. It turns out he was the father of their society, and they all they're all mixed of Sheeta and human descent, which, that was added another creep factor to the whole thing, because what a twisted freak. He wants to turn his descendants into breeding stock. It added to the sense of evil because what kind of a mind can look at grandchildren, great-grandchildren, whatever. I mean, this is through centuries, obviously, but these are his descendants. This is his blood in them.
Yeah, we're talking evil here. Yeah, that's just right there. That's a pretty good statement that he's the bad guy in this. When you're sitting there saying, "Yeah, you're all my children, and now we're gonna start all over again." Hey, let's change the look and give you all bikinis.
But wait, it wasn't even that he was going to start over with them. He was letting his minions do it,
right?
Which even adds another thing, because I mean that totally it would be different if he even said, "I want to keep my bloodline pure, so I will." You know, I mean, so you could say it that way, just to kind of keep that going. He's not the minions. Let him go. Let's go to town. And yeah.
Though in his defense, though, it is kind of nice to see a boss, give something back to the little people, because usually they're the ones that are overlooked. So he's kind of, he wants happy soldiers around him. So not saying it's right, but it's a leadership technique that I can see.
Is this part of your military mentality? Or is this,
well, happy troops are loyal troops.
General Seguin. Did you read that Clarion accidentally rang the bells that brought back the dead?
No.
How did you read that?
No, they told him to. Well, when they told him to ring the bells, didn't they?
I thought that he accidentally did it. That was my impression. I don't know. We had to look back in the book. I've read this book like how many times now? I never caught that.
Yeah.
That was the sister who told him that.
Yeah, when she's cutting him free, she tells him go ring the Sabbath bell 9 times. So it's...
This gives the woman an army of Grundy to fight with, so it was actually a good move. Clarion comes full circle. As he meets with Judah, now he really does need to take the role of submissionary. It was a joke in the first issue, and he was cocky about it, but now he really has to save his people, and he's given the secret of Horrigal.
Yeah, I tell you, one thing, I like the fact that it was his sister telling him that, because you think about the society where the women are kind of downplayed, and she's the one who came up with the idea to basically call in the reinforcements. She came up with the idea, hey, go call some backup in here so we can actually throw down with these guys. And I like that, usage of just the usage of the Grundys, the sister, the brother, then, as you said, Clarion going full circle when he gets the summoning rod.
Dude, if these little blue girls ever call me for backup, they're not getting me. Did you see what happened to their backup?
Well, you know what? They tried. And at first, when they first called them in, I'm thinking, yeah, this is going to be kind of cool. And
Yeah,
then
but you don't notice any of the girls. You don't notice any of the girls lying on the ground.
Well, no, the Grundys were ordered to kill. The girls were the ones doing the ordering. So it's kind of like that whole, you send in your pawns first when you're playing a game of chess.
The white shirts.
Yeah.
Melmoth is seeking the dice that we have seen appear in various places during this, and that is Croatoan. The Grundy only slow them down. Like I said, the Grundy were all destroyed, which was really, really funny. Yeah.
Here's the thing that got me thinking. Now, with the future of this society, they based all their worker and the worker stock on the Grundys. Mm-hmm. All the Grundys are destroyed. All the men are destroyed. What is actually, you look at what's going to happen to that whole society as a whole.
It's really doomed.
Yeah, well, and even if they're able to recover, how will they recover? Because they base so much on the fact that they use their Grundys for the labor. So even if they could somehow, and later we see basically how the society will survive, but it'll change. But I was like, that got me thinking, no more Grundys.
Now, let me ask you a question. With that segment with Judah, where he talks about shutting him off, and talks about him in the workshop and all that, did you take it that Judah was something different than these people? Because he reached into the guy's mouth. Did you take him that he killed Judah, or that he actually, in some way, shut him off?
See, I had, misconception. My first reaction was he went and just, snapped them and killed him.
And I've thought
but
of
there
that
was no giant crack sound.
No.
So it's like maybe Judah was just a puppet or a machinery, or Judah was a sheet of plant into the society to allow this to happen. Basically, you figure if they're going to control the society, they want to put their puppet in a leadership position.
When we talked about how in earlier issues it did seem like Judah was playing for the other team.
Right. So I'm kind of taking it. It was one of those, I was toying with it, and my final decision was that he was like a plant, a machine, because we know the Sheeta like to use the giant spider machines. So I'm thinking, why not a witch boy machine or something like that?
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm of both minds. I'm not like totally sold that he was a construct. I could see him being human too, and that he just killed him. I didn't know. I was curious how you read that. Clarion and Tikal are a different kind of Horrigal because of the different kind of creatures involved. And I really liked this action sequence visually. It looked very supernatural, which to me kind of worked in this setting. The references to his crafty nature fit both characters and really showcases the symbiotic relationship between Clarion and his familiar. And I really liked that concept of the familiar and what these two look like. Melmoth can't die, though due to, the Cauldron's waters have played a big factor in this whole thing. And I think this partially explains why the winged horse lived through so much.
Yeah.
Because of they dove through those waters originally. And I'm glad that they keep referencing these different artifacts from the dice to the Cauldron throughout the stories, because it adds more clarity over what they do. Because they're usually referenced very quickly, but the repeating of them throughout different arcs is what, to me, adds an understanding to them, and I really liked that. He warns them of the harrowing and promises to return when it's done. He puts a spell on Clarion before he left, but the sister and mother helped him out to get separated from Tikal.
Yeah, I like the fact that the witch women have a different level of magic. They have a different thing that they're able to heal. They were able to separate them, able to break the hex that Melmoth put on him. I dig that it was a different style, and it would make sense that they would have their own strengths and their own weaknesses. Each one has its... yes, it was a male-dominated society, but it was the women who basically was holding it together now. And even going forward now, you look at it, most of, I think if not all of the men are dead. So we have a society of women. But as Clarion's leaving, he says he'll send back the Leviathan to help guard the place. So right now we have an influx of male as well as other females, but we have an influx of outsiders. So this society, in my opinion, will continue to survive some way. They will be a little bit different going forward, and that's something I was kind of like, man, I'd like to see what happens with this society. Even if they ever did a Clarion, story in the future, have him returning home and seeing what's going on with his people. Maybe there's some dramatic changes. Maybe it's who knows what now. I don't know.
I'd love to see another mini of this. This is one that it's a very weird story, and I really liked it. I'd like to see a Clarion mini series. I don't know if this would work as a full-blown series, but it's interesting enough to me that it would work as a mini series.
Definitely would work as a miniseries, and I probably would pick up. When I first started reading Clarion, I didn't like it, and when he had his one time with Robin, I was like, I don't know. But the more I'm reading this guy, the more I'm seeing influx with the show. I'm really digging this, and this is a character that now I would pick up a Clarion mini.
And I've liked his appearances post this as well. He works well in the DC universe, because he's an odd character, and I think that shows up so much more when you see him with other characters. It really works. So it's a character I would like to see more of throughout the universe. And I don't know if he's someone that needs to be monthly or if he would be sprinkled in or whatever. But, I mean, he would work easily on like a Teen Titans or something like that as an oddball, just...
Yeah, and he definitely would have worked with Shadow Pact, if they had kept that series going, because just the whole magic and whole mystic side to him.
And he would have added a different twist to that team.
Yeah, because he's a little bit freaky.
Yeah. This is one twisted Scooby-Doo ending. Except instead of the Mystery Machine gang cheerfully exposing the criminal and riding off on the Mystery Machine, Clarion forgives his mother for leading the chorus to execute him. The sister burns the bad guys, cheerfully reminding the audience that there is a scent to remember. And Clarion announces that he is dropping the submissionary role so he can be a soldier and climbs out of the darkness into the light. And it really did have like a Scooby-Doo kind of ending. Clarion's going to continue on his little adventures. And
yeah, I was chuckling just seeing the sister with that big anime toothy type grin on her face. Like, yeah, there was. We're burning them alive. Yeah, I'm like, man.
Hi, that was like one of those things. I really do like this character, creepy and unique, and I would like to see more of him. This was a good wrap up of this series,
and that was a cool ending with him. Yeah, with that was a neat Clarion dialogue. I would like to be many things before I die. Today, I shall be a soldier. I was like, oh, cool. I dig that. There's something about that. Just, it kind of caught me in, especially the way they did it with the end, with the final page with him saying, I will be a soldier. It's leading into, Seven Soldiers #1 and the whole wrap up of the story. So I was like, Clarion's embracing his future.
It was funny when you were talking about the difference between the society. I actually would like to see more of this society and be able to read more about them, because I teach my kids about the Longhouse Indian tribe. And they were a tribe that settled in Geauga County, where I teach at. And one of the interesting things about their tribe was the men were the hunters, and they were the chief. But the women were the ones, because they ran the home, they picked the chief. And that would make sense because they would have a critical eye of all the men, being able to look through them. So they were the ones that together, they decided on who the chief was for the tribe. So it was interesting just to see that different society. And then I looked at this society and I was like, wow, I made an interesting, weird little connection, because I was currently teaching my kids about this when I just happened to be reading this volume. Yeah. So you're right, the society aspect of this really did intrigue me. Let's talk about Mr. Miracle. Mr. Miracle 1 is the book that ties probably the most into Final Crisis as we're going through there, because it really is, this is about the old gods and the new gods and that type of thing. Shiloh is the Doug Henning and David Copperfield of the DC Universe, and I'm glad that this is pulled straight from Kirby. He was groomed in those books to be Scott-Free's successor. So, Shiloh's current trick to escape the pull of the black hole really fits stuff you would have seen back then. Something goes wrong and he vanishes, and he turns up face to face with Metron. And that double page for me was really sharp looking. And I love the use of the various shades of green for the backgrounds. One of the things that stands out from each of the various Seven Soldiers minis to me is style. You look at Clarion, you look at this, you look at Zatanna, you look at Bulleteer, you look at all the other books, Frankenstein, as we keep going on. Each book has its own unique style that seems to just fit the character being presented, and I really like that about this. It's a very stylized series. I'd love to see something like this done again. It doesn't necessarily have to be these characters. I mean, another type of mini where it's, a collection of different minis that sort of intersect in this way, where each of them is very stylized like this, because it really was a nice writing and art showcase all the way through.
Yeah, and definitely this was one of those things where the first time we read through, I didn't know who any of the new gods were. I didn't know any of the Kirby stuff. So when I first read this, I was like, huh? I literally, first time through was my least favorite of the characters, was Mr. Miracle and this whole thing, because I was like, now
that's interesting.
That I have a better understanding, I've read the Kirby stuff, I'm like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, it's really, definitely, impressed me, and I enjoyed it more.
So that's interesting that actually increased your appreciation. And see, I wouldn't have that. I already knew who the new gods were before reading this. So it's interesting that would be a roadblock. I'm glad you shared that. I do like that Metron points out to Shiloh that he does know all of this, that he seems to have forgotten, implying that Shiloh should have a history here and that there's some reason he's forgotten. Because to me, I'm like, well, this is a character from the Kirby bits, and that's one thing, Shiloh Norman, I did not know before reading the Fourth World omnibuses. I knew, Mr. Miracle scot-free, but I didn't realize that Shiloh actually was a Kirby creation until I had read those omnibuses. I'm like, oh my gosh, that added another layer of depth to this for me. Metron is reaching out to Shiloh to somehow help them because the new gods are lost. Mother Box is Shiloh's companion, in many ways guiding and protecting Shiloh. The boom tube takes us to their favorite visual sequence. I mean, we see the history of the gods in the DC universe, and I'm like, that sequence was just breathtaking to me. I really liked how it felt like very otherworldly and very majestic. It looked like something out of a Bible almost.
And you talk about just how the artwork fits each individual series before. They shifted the artwork for this flashback sequence or storytelling sequence, whatnot. It was a little bit different than what's currently all the rest of the stuff in the Mr. Miracle. So that really just caused it to accent and pop out for me. This was something that, as I said before, I was really kind of like, huh? Because I didn't know who it. When I read this sequence, I was like, that's a pretty cool story, and I kind of wanted to see get the more details, and I appreciated that they did give me that little background. So if you had no experience to the new gods, later on when we start seeing the other new gods and start seeing the dark side appear in this, I kind of had a feeling of what was. And where they all fit into the piece because of this little segment, but it was also a nice part of the story. So it wasn't just in case you don't know who they are, here they are. It was part of the story as well.
It does add a certain point to rereading your comics, though. Especially if you're a newer reader, as you get to know a universe more, as you get to know characters more, taking some time out of your month to maybe, give a few minutes to reread some of your comics that maybe you read when you first got into it. Because I think we all as readers, whenever we jump onto a new universe, and I've tried multiple universes as I've gone through my reading. Since the 70s, I read the Marvel Universe. Since the 70s, I've read the DC Universe. Very familiar with those characters. But, I've done the Valiant Universe, and I jumped on Valiant a little bit late. in the game, so I had to, get to know those characters. And, I reread some of those books back when I was... And it was interesting to me how much more I got out of them after a few months into the universe, where I really knew who people were a little bit more. I went back and I read the initial issues that I started off with, and how much more powerful they were. They were enough to hook me in initially, but they meant more later on. When, because I hadn't been on the ground floor and I didn't know who everybody was. So it does add a little bit of, for anybody who's a newer DC reader, I do urge you, hey, a few months down the road, take some of your old books, the stuff that you originally started with, and reread them and see if now you maybe get a little bit more bang, that you know who people are a little bit more, and how they operate and how they think and all that, and see if you catch maybe some themes and interconnectivity you didn't before. This was an important thematic line for me. I can still see that face, like a shattered gravestone, like the end of all hope. Shiloh has to make a choice to come into and free those in the light, or fall and be a slave to the darkness. It makes me wonder how the battle with darkness will be won in Final Crisis. There's that theme of hope again, crushing hope, taking away hope. All those things, that's how evil wins, by destroying hope. As long as there's hope, people who rebel and fight against even the worst evil, even the worst tyranny, will keep on going and will inspire others. If hope is gone, what is left to inspire people? I really like this theme. It is something, and I think this is where thematically, this in particular, connects really nicely into Final Crisis. And I like that theme, because I think it's a real interesting... DC Universe, these characters are supposed to be your beacons of hope. These are some of the most iconic characters. Your Batman, your Superman. Superman especially, is one of those characters. And Wonder Woman, I will put in that category too. The only reason I'm a huge Batman fan, I don't always... Well, no, I take that back. The Batman I grew up with too, a different kind of beacon and hope in the worst of the darkness. I'm gonna correct myself there. He is also. The Trinity, one of the nice things, they add hope to any kind of darkness. And I think that's a message that we're going to be seeing, I'm hoping, out of Final Crisis as well, is at the end we get to see that why these characters inspire that so much, what they bring to the table. We're seeing it in the flash sequences in that. And I think that was a message here that I thought thematically was really important. Shiloh is returned 11 seconds after he vanished, and I really like how tormented he looked. This would be a jarring experience. He had more than 11 seconds there, but no time had passed, and I like that.
Yeah, that it was weird, because you think about these big stunts. You mentioned how he was like David Copperfield and all that of the DCU, and you gotta just figure that sometimes, especially like with these escape artists, with the magicians, with any of the heroes, you go into this thinking, okay, I got plan A, no problem, I'll do this, boom, boom, and then halfway through it, you're like, oh God, this isn't working the way I'm thinking it's going to be. I'm going to be in real trouble. It is. He's getting pulled and stretched, and I was just like, I just ate it up. I was kind of like, oh, okay, yeah. I was glad when he came out. There was a lot of torment, mental, physical anguish, and throughout this entire series of Mr. Miracle, you see him coming to terms with a lot of the stuff he's done and stuff he's maybe has to do, and that character who has that torment, who has that growth, we see him in Final Crisis. I liked how this is a nice, really appreciate the Final Crisis. Norman Shiloh, that we see...
Shiloh Norman.
Right. Yeah, you know what I meant.
I know. I'm just saying. You said Norman Shiloh.
Yeah, I know. I wrote it down so many times in my notes, Norman. And I kept saying, no, wait, isn't that Norman? It's Shiloh. Whatever.
Don't call me Norman. Call me Chubsy Ubsy.
Oh.
Sorry. Anybody who's seen Little Rascals will know why.
Yeah. But...
I don't know why I even thought of that. It has nothing to do with this at all. Except the name just happens to be Norman. I could have done a Psycho reference there, too, and it doesn't apply either, Norman!
Okay, no, that's got a creepy visual going through my head. But
what was the creepy visual?
With that Norman,
Were you imagining me like in a dress, like stabbing you or something?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Really?
As I said, creepy visual.
Yeah, agreed. Did I still have my goatee?
Yes.
All right.
Because the goatee makes you evil.
It does. Oh.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'd be an evil grandmother.
My grandma, what evil goatee you have on? Come on, let's go full tilt.
The better to stab you with. Wow. Shiloh was very easy to connect with. Shiloh,
yes.
Norman, yeah, was very easy to connect with. When he's talking to Gaylord, I really liked the whole "there has to be something more to me" vibe that he was going through. I think this really fits the theme of all the soldiers. They are trying to find themselves. We all go on this journey, and this reoccurring theme makes him feel very human to me. I've had times in my life where I've needed to close myself off to, kind of explore who I am and where I needed to be. While I've found that path, I'm also convinced that this journey really never ends. You always kind of go through this in life. There's places where you need to stop and say, okay, where am I going to go now? Or what's my life going to go? It can be anything from a death in the family to a change of a job to a change in education to whatever. Life has twists and turns where you need to adapt and find yourself again. I really found that to be a charming part of this piece. And I'm talking about the whole Seven Soldiers theme. It's very cool stuff. I do think it's also true that humans, by our very nature, are always striving for something more. We aren't content. Hey, life's pretty good. I'm content here. We always want that. Where can we go next? What more can we do? I think that's something we all have as a theme. I remember when reading this that Gaylord felt like the creepy manager that always has the good advice, but that the advice always was geared towards keeping Shiloh making money so Gaylord could reap the benefits. I don't know why, I just got that vibe from him right away. It somehow read true to what I'm sure situations are like today. It was very true Hollywood story.
Yeah, I was expecting him to call him Colonel at any time. Just kind of like the Colonel with Elvis. There's times when you get that creepy, agent and whatnot that I was like, oh, dude, get rid of him. Trust me, man, just get rid of him. Save yourself a lot of grief. You'll probably be a lot happier in life.
Flash to Shiloh's meeting with the psychologist. I love the way this built. I was looking for Darkseid's minions to pop up, and this wasn't looking like a plot to, this totally had the whole vibe of it's a plot to mess with Shiloh's head. What was real, what wasn't. Shiloh is realizing that there's more of the gods' world bleeding into ours, and we see Granny and the female Furies in this world, the ones who later turn up in the Darkseid clip sequences in various comics. And it was nice to see kind of the origins and the backgrounds of these characters. Yeah, I'm going to relax with a woman who has a forked tongue.
Careful, baby, Granny bites. Yeah. I was like, oh.
And Shiloh's immediately connecting them to Darkseid and wondering what he's getting involved in. He would be sensitive to this considering his relationship with the new gods. And I like the fact that he doesn't seem to know, that he should know these people or there's a past with them, but that there's some kind of connection there. He's a holdover from the Fourth World, but he doesn't seem to know it.
Yeah.
Interesting statement from Shiloh. He lives in a world where evil won. He also asks the important questions of the Shrink. I've been coming to you for 3 years. How come my self-esteem never improves? Perhaps because the psychologist is one of those who will try to keep him from generating hope and from having hope himself, and that's kind of, seems to be what his job and theme is. So interesting little twist there. How many of us have had the chance to change or modify relationships that were holding us down, keeping us from achieving our full potential? It's hard to change your situation. It's often hard to leave those things that make us feel safe, that often hold us back. And I really got into this, that whole aspect of change and generating your own change. This issue wraps up with Shiloh meeting the Black Racer for the first time. He has a bet going with Metron that Shiloh would lose everything here at the beginning. Do you think that means that the beginning of his awakening to what's going on around him, Jim? Or the awakening of his memories, or what? What did you take that awakening that they're talking about?
I took it as the awakening of what's going on with his memories, just his influence with the dealing with the new gods, and I was kind of looking for the Sheeta reference and Sheeta tie-ins, because I was thinking maybe it's an awakening with, dealing with the Sheeta as well. Okay. It's their beginning of the harrowing, so maybe that's what they're considering part of the awakening.
I kind of wonder if this isn't to a tie, like a prequel to his quest in Final Crisis, to be an agent of bringing back the gods so they can help in the war against Darkseid. Interesting that this theme would then blend right into that. We see the broken chess piece, a symbol for Shiloh, perhaps, as the car comes bearing down on him in the cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really... This was a really cool issue. It was a cool story. And I agree with you that this read much better on multiple reads. After you really get into the series, the Shiloh story really kind of takes off. Zatanna number 4. This is the other series that wraps up in this volume. Another great example of how these stories so cleverly weave in and out of each other. Zatanna and Misty explore her costume wardrobe and prepare to head for the swamp. And it's the same swamp we see from the Zero issue and from Guardian when we saw, the Newsboy Legion.
Right.
And I really liked that. I like that we see the veteran hero following the mystery and trying to build a plan to handle the Sheeta invasion. She heads to seek out the 7 unknown men for clues. I also really like the bits where she tells Misty that she and the horse are to leave her there and to go to safety. Because, it shows she's been through the end of the world events before, and she won't let this one happen. But also that she's thinking about the civilian, in this case, who's a little less experienced, and she doesn't want to have to worry about her for the battle that's coming up. Also would be a liability to a certain extent that Zor could have used against her. She didn't know it was Zor at the time, but she knew there was an enemy that she would have to face, and I liked that kind of concept there.
Yeah, I also kind of took it as she was thinking because of Misty's connection to the Sheeta. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's not best to have her there at the time of this fight. Who knows? Maybe they could use the power, pull the power from Misty, and strengthen their own attack. I kind of took it as also part of that. You don't want Misty around the Sheeta because maybe they'll use her against you in some way, or maybe make Misty attack you, and you have to deal with Misty as well.
See, I didn't take it that Zatanna knew yet that she would... Well, yeah, she was partially fighting the Sheeta too, right. Yes, that's interesting. Yeah. I don't know. That adds another little layer to it. Because you're right, she was still following that mystery as well. Things are getting worse. They notice footprints on the ceiling, and when Misty offers to leave her die, which was part of Croatoan, Zatanna reveals that her powers never left. And I do like how teaming with this little girl pushed her to find herself.
Yeah.
Each of these journeys have that in common, too. At the end of the day, they have started to find their path. They have started to step up. I didn't have the heart to tell her there wasn't much to being a superhero. It was all about finding yourself in a position where you're the only one who can save the day. Do you freak out and walk away, or do you grit your teeth and walk into hell if that's what it takes? If you're risking your life to save the lives of everyone else, what would you do? And I really liked this great superhero dialogue. It makes it feel like it's possible for you to be a hero. It makes you want to step up when you need to. Comics can be the medium that brings out our best and the most positive aspects in ourselves. They're a model that we can kind of aspire to. And I really liked how she got down to the basic core roots of it. And that was, heroes should be that kind of, the every man can be a hero. You don't have to have the powers. And it's a theme that I think this plays nicely into later the Bulleteer issue, where we see someone who has powers who doesn't necessarily get it. Zatanna boils it down to the fact that it's not about powers, it's about who you are and your strength of character. And that really worked for me here.
Yeah, I definitely really dig seeing her just knuckle up and do what she's got to do. In the previous issues, we saw her fighting, the bad guys, and we saw her using her knowledge of magic, and it was just, always, there'll always be rule number one, always be prepared and whatnot, and all the different rules of magic. And you see it right here, basically, if you will, the final rule of, you got to know who you are. You got to trust what you're going to do and do it when it's time to do it. That's the key to being a hero. I could see a building burning with someone inside it. If I don't choose to run in that building and pull that person out, then I'm just sitting there staring at a burning building. You're presented with that choice, and do you make the difficult choice? And that's what you got to do. It was one of those things where this was a multiple read-through where I saw more of the nature of the hero and whatnot, that I was just like, this is cool.
Which just shows the kid that stands up to the school bully.
Yeah.
And gets the other kid out of the situation. There doesn't have to be any fisticuffs or anything like that, but just being the one to take the lead and take the charge and save somebody from a situation and give them a sense of hope or something like that. That to me, it shows that there's real heroic situations going on every day that don't need to be. And I like that. I like that little concept. Now she is faced with that shadowy figure that she assumes is her dad, but turns out to be Zor, and the battle for magic begins. And I love magic heroes because they're similar to the Lanterns. You see some really wacky things, but they make sense in that context. They just seem to work. Bullets flying from eyes, personality manipulation, Zatanna turning into Zorina, but yet the mischievous daughter freeing Zatanna to cause her father further trouble. And it was really funny because I liked that even at that point, the dad was laughing at the whole thing because he was so proud of his twisted daughter for pulling one over on him.
Dude, this was one of those things where I literally, this magic fight sequence, I read it through multiple times before I was able to get a grip on it. This time, before doing this podcast, I have more experience with magic, comics, so I understood everything and I was actually enjoying it. But the first time I read through this, I was like, what did he do? I was just like going, this was another one of those confusing moments for me. I was enjoying it, once I got a handle on how much was, battle in the mind, how much was battle physically, what was, astral type battle, what was reality battle. Once you get a handle on that, it's like, okay, that is some cool stuff. And you mentioned just like with some of the funny inner dialogue between the two of them, where he's like, Zor's like, I have brought the wrath of God to its white and knobby knees, and Z's like, I have a red belt in Martian Kung Fu. It was just like,
and a nice reference to John John's Martian Manhunter. It's funny when you talk about that. One of the things, and I don't know if people can read Morrison and get through him the first time and understand everything that he's doing. My hat is off to you, and I'm just saying that in general. I am not that person. When I read Morrison's work, I have to read it 2, 3, even 4 times before I get it. And that's just me. Maybe it's the way I'm wired or what have you. It's something where it's funny. My early experiences with Morrison's work, I didn't enjoy his work because I wasn't getting it. As I became more experienced with reading him, I began to really enjoy rereading it and finally understanding and clicking with it. He's like a puzzle. It's funny, though, and this is just my own personal thing, Morrison's somebody that I like to read Morrison, but then I like to read somebody else. Like, I don't like to read, tons of Morrison in a row. I like to read, when my comic stack comes out, it's great to read, Batman R.I.P. when it comes out. Because I know I'm going to read that multiple times. I'm going to get this really cool story. But then I like to read somebody else. I'll read a Jeff Johns. And that's not saying, it's funny, when I say that, it makes it sound like I'm saying, well, that Jeff Johns' work is simpler. It's not. It's different. It's a different writing style. And Jeff Johns' approach, I just seem to click with it right away. And I'll reread and relook at, most of my comics now, I do find that I reread 2 or 3 times, just in a different way. I'll focus on the art, the second time, then I'll go back through and really focus on the dialogue, or, there's different elements that I'll focus on. Morrison's, I do it really to understand it. With the other comics, it's like, I understood it the first time. On my second and third read-through, I catch some thematic things that I didn't catch the first time around, but I understood the overall story. In his case, I really usually am clueless until I've read it 2 or 3 times.
With Morrison, I sometimes actually, I don't read it completely through end to the beginning. I'll start reading, go back, and I'll do a loop on certain sections, just because I'm like, I can't go on being completely clueless. I fully admit that with this guy. I'll read a section, go, what did I read? Read another, I'll reread multiple pages sometimes with him, just because that's his writing style. And if I don't know, you gotta, sometimes I think you gotta just reread it a couple times just to get the understanding, see what he's saying, But
I do find that, it's a rewarding experience.
Yes. I truly, I enjoy when I do that, because I enjoy what I'm reading, because it is one of those things, oh, okay, yeah, cool, oh, that's neat, the dude's freaky, there's some stuff that it's, it's not just a sit-down, nice light read. You gotta be ready to read this, it's something you gotta sit down, strap into chair, have maybe, some type of beverage or whatnot that you need, and you just go into it. You have fun with it.
And I do want to say, I'm not oversimplifying writers in general. Every writer that I read there's something about them that hooks me. There's something about them that I look for. There's a flavor about them that keeps me coming back. They're not cookie cutter, and I don't mean it that way. You look at the Morrison's fits into a certain category for me. I know what I'm going to have to do when I go in from that experience in order to get the enjoyment from the book. Now, that doesn't work for everybody. Since some people get annoyed by that type of thing, and that's not their cup of tea. Other people, and my hat's, if you're one of those readers that you're sitting here, guys, I don't know what you're talking about. I read this guy the first time through and I catch it. My hat's off to you. 100% kudos. I salute you. I am not wired that way at all. I'm a mess on the first read through usually. R.I.P. I love R.I.P. First couple issues, R.I.P., I had no clue what was going on. After, it was either the second issue or the third issue. One of those issues, everything clicked for me. I went back through and reread everything, and I was like, oh, that's what they're doing here. So I mean, it's really, and it's Final Crisis. We talked about that with Final Crisis. It wasn't until we saw what was going on with Turpin and Darkseid that we were like, oh my god,
Yeah,
this
it makes
is what
sense.
they're
Oh,
doing.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, and everything started to really click. I love how the man of Zatanna's dreams wasn't a red herring. It plays nicely into these events because she had like that little break where it was like a 2-part story, then you go into these other 2 parts, but that first 2 parts plays right into this really nicely. When he tries to mentally break her down, to take her self-confidence, I was realizing that at the start of this story it would have worked. Her journey with Misty made her strong enough to withstand Zor. And it really was something where we got to see, her reinvigoration. Patooey on you and your stupid beard. Or patooey on you and you have a stupid beard.
Liar, it's magnificent beard, and I know you want one. I love that, dude. I was like, oh.
Now, Jim, I got to ask you this. What is a magnificent beard to you?
What is a magnificent beard? Well, right here,
Is
baby.
he right? Or do you have a different preference? Because Zor has that, like, kind of, I don't know.
I think it's all about the individual style.
Okay.
And the beard's got to fit the style. Like right now, I couldn't wear one of them big, bushy Grizzly Adam beards, but it works on Grizzly Adams. Green Arrow has that broad goatee, that yellow arrow fling goatee of his, that works for him.
And I actually put down that Zor, she's right. He has a stupid beard because he's a poor man Ali's queen. I mean, he's trying to do that look, but he doesn't have the depth to his beard for it.
Right. Yeah, you got to watch that. You got to pull it off. You got to have the right look for it.
It's like he looked at an Ali Queen picture in a magazine and said, "Ooh, I would look so cool if I had that." But then everyone's looking at him and going, "That dude looks like a tool." Behind his back, Zor's
People
really
are laughing
powerful.
at him. People
are like, like any minions that he may have at any point in time are all snickering at him.
Yeah.
Whether it's a little gnome or whatever. It's like, look at Zor, he's got that beard.
And he probably gets food stuck in it when he eats, and people are like, it'll sit there for hours, and people are like, you got some corn stuck in it.
Oh, that's got some pee. I love the bits where they were walking on planets and throwing around comets. Because that's one of the things about magic. When you've got really cool, well-written magic battles, you see these really strange things. Green Lantern's the best comparison to me. Because this really did have that kind of feel. Did you take that he was tearing apart reality around her? But then, as she ran around through time to wait for him to pull everything down around him, like she went ahead. I don't know where did you take this?
See, that was the thing. I was taking part of it as the whole astral plane type, non-reality fighting type thing, where it was really a battle in the mind. Mm-hmm. Then maybe they shifted to another dimension. Maybe they did a little time shifting. That was the thing where I said it took multiple read-throughs for me really to get a grasp of what's reality, what's not reality. Was it just two people sitting there staring at each other with that that blank look on their face? And in reality, in their heads, they are off in another world. That's kind of how I saw most of this battle.
Going on to the mental aspect of
it was
magic?
more of it was definitely like a different plane of existence that only magicians can get to, and the mystic arts.
Which, and I mean, we saw her in the early issues travel to other planes.
Right.
So that would fit. Okay. Now here's a question. As she and Zor are struggling to win, when she looks up and sees the 7 unknown men, the typewriter keys, was that her looking outside the story she's in? Are they the writers of the story or those reading the story? Or was that symbolic of the books being written in her? I didn't understand that because I saw. Did you see the typewriter keys that were up there? And I was looking at that. I was trying to see. Is she like kind of is she breaking through another plane of existence there? I don't mean necessarily even that she was breaking through into our world, but was that another symbolic? Like she's going into another place.
Well, I kind of took it as she was seeing the writers of her story.
Okay.
Because we learned where her dad's hidden books are, and I took it that's what she was seeing, the writing of those books. Mm-hmm. Especially considering where we learned where they were hidden. That's how I took it. So that was kind of like her actually, in a way, getting access tapped into her dad, and kind of like that other journey, that other side, pulling in strength from there.
So is the plague Zor set in motion the Sheeta strain? Now they are trying to unleash the 7 soldiers to stop it?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're seeing now the beginning.
Right.
Because of the time travel.
Because of the time loop and all that stuff. And we also see her friends who fried in the first arc, are kind of back.
Right.
You know, so it's a whole flip-flop and, flim-flam of time and magic. So, the event that launched this whole beginning actually happened near the end of it.
Okay.
But it's, because of time is that gooky, weird thing that makes your head explode, and especially add magic in with the time, you're really dealing with some funky stuff.
Yeah, and I like that.
Yeah.
I really did like that.
And
when I got it,
as
I was
I said,
whoa.
multiple read-throughs for me to understand this.
I'm like, we just saw the beginning of all this nonsense right here in issue 4 of this.
Yeah.
I did like the idea that her dad wrote the spell books in her, as we were talking about that. Parents are the people that raise us, teach us lessons that are written on us. Good and bad, they make up who we are, and they carry them, with us. That's like their legacy. We, carry that on. I liked that kind of thematic thing there. Zora's left on the operating table, stopped for the time being. Z winds up back at a very lonely group meeting with Etta. Now, is this Etta candy or is that a coincidence? Because I noticed Z eating candy, and I'm like, is that like a little reference to her, or am I just admittedly, I might be way off diving on that one.
That didn't even enter my head.
You said Etta.
Yeah, I didn't even catch that or
I'm making a huge dive there, so I'm like,
I don't think so.
Yeah. I'm not even 100% sure. That's why I'm throwing it out there. So if you don't think so...
I didn't even catch that, to be honest with you.
Okay.
It never even entered my head. And throughout this whole thing, freaky stuff constantly was going in and out. So
yeah. And that's why I think maybe I was making freaky leaps where there aren't any. But she tries to make sense of all this. When she says she needs an adventure, Misty arrives with the horse, telling that her stepmother is about to invade the Earth as the issue closes.
Yeah, it was funny. When she did that, I kind of started chuckling to myself, going, Z, didn't you learn your lesson about open-ended spells? I need a new adventure. That could have been interpreted very broadly. Okay, you need a new adventure. How's this? The sun's about to explode in 10 seconds. Good luck. Hold on. I was like, Z, what you doing there, honey? Right. Come on.
And I was laughing at that, too, because it's the man of my dreams all over again. It's great. Yeah. Bullets here, number 1. I felt so bad for my wife after reading this. This could so be me if I had any scientific know-how that could turn me into a hero. Lucky for her, I'm a dolt in that area, so she's safe from being turned into a human bullet. It's like sitting here, I'm like, well, yeah, I like the whole hero thing enough. I think I've got a grasp on what a hero is. If I had powers, wow, what kind of cool things could I do? And I will say that's the difference. I would want powers to actually help people. I would get a thrill from that. But my wife would be in such danger because with me, something stupid would happen where the best laid plans, I would do something dumb, she'd get turned into whatever it is,
Dude, I'm so glad you compared yourself to the husband. Because I got so many things where I was just ripping this dude apart. Going,
and I did too.
I was laughing my head off.
Just so
now
you know,
that you're saying that, I'm like,
this dude,
cool, this is a double whammy.
Dude, believe me, whatever you say about this dolt, I say 3 times as worse. So I'm comparing myself to this idiot. Now, and that is the point where the distinction does get away from that. But I was laughing when he was doing that. I'm like, boy, if I really could turn myself into a hero, would I try it? I've been surrounded by this stuff my whole life. Tell me it wouldn't be a dream. Wait, seriously, if you had the opportunity to turn yourself into a superhero, wouldn't you?
In a heartbeat.
Yeah.
I come on. I know me well. If I had the chance to, if I was like, as you said, scientifically inclined and all that stuff, but
he gives us a bad name.
Yeah, he's what happens when comic geeks go wrong, man.
Yeah. Because I'm hoping I would never be as bad as this moron.
No, see, he had other problems. He wasn't just a comic book hero geek. He was a bit of a perv. And that's what pushed him over the edge.
Yeah.
Whereas the whole
time... And that is a distinction.
Yeah. You're not a perv. So, that would say...
I could see myself, though, like, hey, honey, you got to get... Because I do like doing things with her. So it'd be one of those... And I've got a very patient wife who a lot of times will go with me on my insanity just to be patient. I think it's sometimes to keep me quiet. Because admittedly, I'll go on and on about this stuff, which, people listening to this podcast probably wouldn't understand. It's not like we go on and on about anything. But but I mean, it is one of those things where, like, I was like, I'm connecting with this in totally a bad way.
Yeah.
We see her kick things off, though, and I want to talk about this. The pacing of this was great, because we see her already in bulleteer mode when this kicks off, wondering what to do next with her life. And then we're gradually given flashbacks that reveal how she wound up at this stage. I liked the way this story was told a great deal.
Oh, definitely. This was a really cool way to do the origin of the hero. Mm-hmm. You know, you get the end results, you know what's going to happen, and even just that opening paragraph where you see when she comes to him and catches him at 4 a.m. surfing porn, and he does the quick, I was working. You can see, okay, this is why things go horribly wrong in the future. And it's great, nice tease, but it was a cool flow through, hip-hopping back and forth, the past, present, future, and whatnot. I really, really enjoyed this. This was one of those where after reading this whole Bulleteer series, I want more of the Bulleteer. I really did. I liked who she was and where she came from and how she became the Bulleteer. This is one of those stories that could have very easily completely stood on its own and been a great mini.
This is where I'd like some kind of anthology title. You know, like your Marvel Comics Presents or something like that. Where you have like a main story that's going on that's the big hook. And it's got to be a main story featuring one of the A-list characters. Because realistically, let's be honest with you, if you want people to get hooked into the book, they're not going to typically pick up the Bulleteer. Right?
Right.
I mean, unless it's a mini series, then maybe people will give it a shot. But if you give it a full-blown series, unfortunately, we're seeing this with books like Manhunter and Blue Beetle right now. They aren't getting the sales numbers that they want. They're fantastic books, but they're being canceled. And that's part of the problem is some of these lesser-known concepts aren't selling. I'd love to see an anthology again where writers could have an opportunity to pitch stories that would, be able to be, there's a big main character story that's hooking people in, but then these creators can really go hog wild with some of these lesser-known characters, and we get to see more of them. I don't know if it would do well. I know those series kind of like run hot and cold on sales numbers themselves, but I would love something like that where we could really just kind of do solo or team, stories where people could just kind of have fun. Writers could then have some freedom to really do some fun things with some of these, but then spread it out over time, so that way, they can be on their main books. They're, top tier titles that they're carrying, but yet really get kind of creative and have a good time. I don't know. It's something I would love to see again. It's just kind of a wish of mine. Because I love stories like Blue Beetle and Manhunter. I loved All New Adam. These were books that I really dug and really got into. And, like when All New Adam was canceled, I was really sad. Manhunter and Blue Beetle, I'm enjoying those books a great deal. And to see them being canceled, I'm like, oh, no. Because they kind of round off my reading. So this drops us into her with powers, but slowly reveals the mystery of how it all happened. Flashbacks to her husband suffocating in a similar form to hers, and showing us the tragic ending of his life, but then frame it with happier days when they just got married and were in college together. Let me ask you this, Jim. Would you coat yourself with a super hard substance by choice?
Well, here's the thing. It was funny because, as I'm looking at what the guy's doing, and as soon as he said, we need a human test subject, I'm like, dude, you don't go from a mouse to humans. You do the lower primates. You do the chimpanzees. You make sure, one, you can remove it from the mouse before you put it on something else. There was a lot of stuff that I was like, as I'm reading, I'm like, dude, you get your head out of your, and actually use your scientific mind. That's, that's why part of his problem isn't the fact that he's, a scientist gone wrong. He's a perv, and he's motivated purely by his lust, and he's not thinking with the big brain. He's thinking with the other brain, and that gets you in trouble every time, dude. And,
And there's nothing noble about this.
Yeah, there's nothing. This guy is doing it purely for all the wrong reasons. And his wife is just, sorry, wrong place, wrong time. You married a jerk.
Right.
And it's like, oh.
It's funny, though, because I was watching that. I was thinking of Colossus from the X-Men. Obviously, you can't help but make comparisons. But the twist with Colossus is he can change back and forth. There was a period of time in the X-Men, I don't know if you read this, where Colossus got injured. And I believe it was a battle with the Marauders, and I might be wrong. And when he eventually got back up on his feet again, he had this long stretch in the X-Men where he couldn't turn back again. And that was like a nightmare, to be stuck in that form all the time. And that was the cool thing. Powers are cool as long as you can lead a normal life. But then all of a sudden when you can't, and it's an interesting twist then where being a hero has a negative connotation. Characters like the Beast are a great example of that, where they're stuck. Even Jaime, when we talk about him, he's got this scarab. It's a part of him. And that in itself is kind of a creepy little thing because your life now is no longer just yours.
Yeah,
your life belongs to somebody else or something else too, especially with this thing being sentient. He has no alone time to speak of. So it's interesting, to see those type of characters and those twists, and it does make me think about, would I want powers on that level? I don't know. The mouse didn't change back at all. That would be a big...
that for me would be the huge thing before even considering doing human testing. I'd figure out a way to get it off the mouse,
Yeah.
Or see what happens. Hey, let's try a dog, or let's try something bigger than a mouse, because you know what?
It doesn't look so great on the mouse as we're going right now.
Now, I did like how they were running experiments and they were doing stuff like they reinforced concrete, put the cheese in the thing, and he runs through the wall to get to the concrete. I'm like, oh, okay. That'd be kind of a neat thing to have, but still, it's...
Think of all the cheese you could get.
Yeah.
The funny part is when he's thinking of a human test subject, I'm like, well, what would the other alternative for a human test subject? Well, you can't do it on another human because that always becomes the arch nemesis.
Yeah.
So, you got to go under superhero logic in the sense that it's not ready for human testing. Maybe switch to a badger.
Yeah, or I was thinking chimpanzee, an ape, something closer to
monkey?
us. Yeah, something closer to human form. It's
always a monkey, though. Why not a giraffe?
Well, the giraffe is nothing like a human. You want something close to you so that, you can experiment so you'll know how you'll react. Now, granted, chimpanzees are much stronger than humans, so you're putting this, steel coat on something that's already stronger than you, making them even stronger. It may not be the smartest move because they may say, get it off me, crack, and kill you, so it's...
A turtle would be fun.
Ooh, yeah.
Like a super turtle? See if they're faster or anything like that?
Well, I couldn't imagine them getting faster if you encase them in steel, so...
No, but remember the mouse was super strong, so now they have more strength to move.
Well, it's not the strength that I thought that made turtles go slower. It's
just the way that their body structure is?
Yeah, it's just the way they're structured. They're also kind of laid back kind of people.
They really are.
They're like, dude, surfers.
Yeah. So it would be like the super... You've watched what was the Pixar movie?
Yeah, Finding Nemo.
Yeah. Okay. With a hot wife like that, we got to talk about the dude being on the net. What is the problem with this guy? It goes back to that theme we were talking about before. People always want something more. And you're sitting there, I'm like, dude, you got life pretty good right now. I don't understand this. The basement setup you got, he's got like quite a weird man cave going on down there.
Yeah.
And, this wife's okay with it. It's like, dude, be happy with that.
You hit it off the nail. Just like he's got this really cool life that people would kill for, and he's just throwing it away on some little freaky fantasies he's got going on. Because when I first was reading about him, I was figuring, okay, he's like Infinity Inc. They want the fame, the glory. I'm like, no, it's not even. He's not even after fame and glory. He's after some little perverted type sex thing. Plus, also he wants that I'm going to stay forever young. I want to be, and he even talks about his wife saying, yeah, you look good now, but we can encase you and you could be immortalized.
And he talks about her lines on her face and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, dude, that's like the one place, like with females, that's the ultimate low blow. I mean, there's certain things that like people will say that it's funny. There's two women that I work with who are the sweetest people in the world who are both pregnant this year, right? And these were females who were just saying the dumbest things to them about, oh, you look like you're ready to burst and all that stuff. Now, I know I'm a guy, all right? I'm supposed to be saying dumb things like that, right? I'm like sitting there going, oh my, and you could tell on they're both of their faces that like somebody just like kicked them in the head, that you feel like this small because you're going to be self-conscious already. When this guy was saying this, I was so connecting with that. I'm like, people are just, and it's very real. This is very real because people say dumb things without thinking of like the other person. And this guy totally, his whole MO with being a hero, it's not about thinking about other people. It's all about what being a hero can do for him. Wanting to be a hero doesn't make you a hero. Being a hero is usually something that finds you when you least expect it. This guy, it's not something inside him. He wants superpowers. He does not want to be a superhero. And there's a difference. There's a huge distinction there. He keeps telling her, I want to be a superhero. It's not true. Because he doesn't understand the definition of what a hero really is.
Yeah, and I like that in this process, we see her have to knuckle up.
Yeah.
We see her have to learn what it is to be a hero and goes on her own little journey. Yeah.
She's put in a situation where she needs to do what Zatanna said. You know, and that's where the Zatanna issue flowed very nicely into this, because Zatanna talks about what a hero really is. You find yourself in that situation where you need to step up, and she finds herself in that situation, has to make that decision. Do I step up here or do I walk away? Her husband would have walked away. She stepped up. There's the difference. You know, and that's because she didn't know, would this protect her, would it not? He's testing the skin on the mouse, so we get a taste for the fact that, you know, it adds strength to the creature. I love those bits. As the flashback continues, I start to hate this guy. You know, I've got a wife who doesn't try to change me. He's trying to change her. You know, we've got differences. My wife and I have differences of hobbies, and I respect that, and I like her for being who she is. And in some ways, I think it makes us a stronger couple because of the fact that we have to learn to respect our differences as well as our similarities. You know, we're not 100% different. We got a lot of similarities too, but there's some definite differences. You know, like I'm into comics and video games and stuff like that, and she'll entertain those things and, you know, be interested and listen to me talk and ramble on and stuff like that. But she, you know, she reads novels and, you know, she does her own kind of thing. She doesn't, you know, she rides horses. I don't, you know, I'll do that stuff with her, but, you know, it's not my first choice of things to do. So, you know, there's certain, you know, points in time where we need to bend for each other. And I do think that makes us a stronger couple. This guy's not doing any bending. It's all about, like, what can I make you into to fit you into my world? And that's always a bad sign for a relationship. Big warning sign in this case. But it read real, because we've seen
it that was one thing about this. She had that really, you know, realistic fashion to it. Now, granted, we're dealing with super science. You really can't cover someone's skin with some, you know, liquid type metal or whatever that was, but there's still that real emotion. And the one thing I really enjoyed was in one of the flash sequences when they show her in the hospital and the nurses and the doctors are kind of like looking at her with like kind of a disdain, because there are just wards on wards of people who try to get superpowers and botch it for some reason. Mm-hmm. They play around with some radioactive spider. They drink some mystic goo or dance in some radiation or something like that. And it's like, I was like, yeah, you know, if we're living in a society that had heroes flying over the place and like, hey, I wonder if I you know, swam in that radioactive pool, would I get powers? Let me find out. Yeah, I could see people doing that.
Well, we're a society that's very media driven. We tend to follow a lot of things that we see in the media and follow it blindly. And in this particular case, you know, showing us in this case, it would be all over the media. You'd see superheroes doing that all the time, and people would just not be getting the right message. Mm-hmm. You know, the heroes may be noble, but these people aren't understanding that. I love that he is all about inviting Green Lantern over to dinner, but if you take a look, hell was always around normal people.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure when a superhero wants to unwind, they want to get away from all the heroic business and just live a normal life for that short, isolated period of time, because it is so rare. And, you know, they cherish those moments. I highly doubt he'd want to hang with this doofus.
No, I couldn't see Hal wanting. Now, his wife, yeah, I could see Hal wanting to hang with her, because she looked good.
Especially Hal now.
Yeah.
The interesting thing when you're talking about the age lines with the wife and all that, I love stories of immortals, like vampires and Highlander types, but I wouldn't want to be an immortal. All of your friends dying around you. Doctor Who in its later years has done an excellent job of showing the loneliness of being an immortal. You know, his friends and companions move on and he's left alone again. And they actually explore the fact that sometimes the Doctor is afraid to make connections with people because of the heartache of seeing them either die on a mission or an adventure or anything like that. And if you build that kind of relationship, the whole season with Martha Jones was devoted to that. And I really liked reading this and thinking about those type of other sci-fi shows that I'm really enjoying that explore similar themes to wanting to live forever. And the dope did this to impress a woman on what was probably a pay site. You know, when he doused himself with this stuff, when he tried it himself, you know that, like, this really fit the Mohinder Suresh storyline in Heroes. Not that he was doing it for a sexual reason, but he put himself in a dangerous state in his attempt to understand those with special powers. His obsession getting the better of him. You know, not being patient, not taking time. Now. I need to handle this now. In this case, he might bring about the end of the world as we know it. And for Heroes. Now we're seeing this particular guy, and he's doing this, and because of his obsession, not only did he kill himself, but he infected his wife. Only because of the fact that he touched her. Apparently there were not 2 mice in the cage. He had no idea, because he didn't do enough testing, that was going to be an after effect. He didn't know that touching her. Did you take it that he knew?
Oh,
that?
no, he didn't. I don't think he intentionally did it.
No, I don't either.
I did laugh when he first touched and started spreading, because I'm thinking, oh, gee, thanks a lot, dumbass. You not only have you condemned yourself to death, now you've condemned your wife. All right.
Hey, bang, bang,
All right. What a wonderful
but
guy.
But not knowing, I really took it that he did not know.
Yeah, I don't think he was intentionally. It was one of those things where you're in a panic situation where he wasn't exactly thinking too clearly. He couldn't breathe because it was like too constrictive on him. It's one thing about saying, yeah, I'll be covered with this liquid metal, but does the metal give when you breathe? Because your body, your chest is constantly contracting and expanding when it sucks in air. Well, his didn't. So that was a horrific way to die. You think about it, his body pretty much, he suffocated to death. And it was a slow process where he's like, and so he reached out to his wife, realizing I did something stupid, and it spread onto her.
Now, here's the question. Do you think now that was because it was unstable initially that happened and that she no longer has that? Because I noticed her costume that she creates later has the gloves on the hands and things like that. Do you think she's more like a character like Rogue, perhaps, from the X-Men, where when you touch, this is going to infect other people? Or do you take it like now that it's stabilized on her, she's able to touch people? Because I looked in I actually went back and looked into the part where she rescued the people. And we see her carrying somebody, but it looks like she's touching them where they're clothed. It wouldn't drift over. Does it have to be contact with skin, or do you take it that it's stabilized? I'm just curious. I'm curious to how you're reading this now.
Here's how I read it. I read it that it was too concentrated on him, and it needed to thin out. By touching her, it thinned it out more.
So she got less of a dose?
Right. She got less of a dosage. So, once again, it goes to how much. Maybe like when they did on the mouse, they just did a drop. Of the metal. So when he did it himself, he was like, well, I need more than a drop on me because I'm bigger. Well, no, that's why you experiment with larger animals, seeing how much more do you need. I think he did such a large dosage, and it needed to thin out, and it needed to spread out. He probably gave himself
he gave himself a giraffe size dose.
Right, exactly.
Yes. So I take back what I'm saying then. A giraffe would not be the right animal to test this on.
Right.
People would fear her, and I did like this aspect of it. Imagine you are the parent of an autistic child, and your child's teacher turns into some metal woman. Wouldn't you be afraid it would infect your child, or that she somehow wasn't safe? There is a really cool ideal to being a hero, but there is a human nature twist that plays out here as well. We get to see kind of the aspect of the civilian reaction to her. And I like that theme, which plays into similar reactions to what we're seeing in New Krypton right now, where, all's not as it looks like in New Krypton. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil New Krypton for anybody right now. We'll talk a little bit more about New Krypton and Speeding Bullets. But this was an interesting little theme, as we were talking about here.
And I like the fact that, she's sitting there, and you mentioned with the autistic children, and then people asking her, are you a robot? What's going on here? And then you naturally have that people would think, oh, why'd you do this to yourself? Thinking she did that intentionally. Sure. And how much is she going to go into it saying, well, my husband did it and it was an accident to spread to me.
But would that even help her?
No, because then people would really look at it like, your husband did this to you? What kind of freak are you guys?
Yeah.
Now, granted, you and I, if we ran into it, we're like, oh, that's kind of cool. Hey, that's kind of neat. And just because we're geeks that way. We would, we're hero geeks, and we'd like to see what she can do and whatnot. Now,
and ultimately, knowing the two of us, we'd crack on each other quite a bit too.
Yeah,
we'd have all kinds of weird nicknames for ourselves and things like that. Yeah,
but I did though when she was looking for like what's she gonna do now. That was something that did get to me, because I was first thought that popped in my head. If something like this had happened to me, I would either become a super cop or become a super firefighter. Because if you have that impervious skin, I wouldn't initially think, oh, I'm going to be a superhero. I would think, hey, I wonder if I can get into the police academy. Or, firefighting, I could really run into a burning building, not get burned, because we saw her rescue people and save them. These are the thoughts that would go in my head initially if something like this had happened to me.
I would probably do both of those things, but beforehand I'd become a crash test dummy just so I could get the most hits on YouTube.
This is Sean Whalen, and this is attempt number 23. Crash!
Doc Nord!
Now, would you wear a cape?
Huh?
Would you wear a cape?
I don't know.
Depends on what you're doing. If it was a cool free fall thing, then you got to have the cape so you have the flapping behind
I
you.
wear a clown suit. It's the Iron Clown.
You wear the squeaking shoes.
Yeah, there we go. I did feel bad for her, though, when we were talking about this, because the skin betrayal was bad enough, because it ended her life as she knew it. Her way to make a living, her way to make an income. Probably, she probably, working with autistic children was probably very rewarding. It's probably something she went to school for. She trained to do this type of thing, so it was a vocation to her. To have that yanked out from underneath you, people throughout their life make life-changing decisions because they get to the point where they're like, I really was motivated to get into this. I've been doing it for so long. I need a change. She didn't get to that point. So now something's been taken from her that's probably special to her because of him. He's dead. This has been taken from her. Now all of a sudden, she finds out this guy's fooling around online. Maybe isolated, she'd get past any of these things. But, when they put them together, no wonder she wants to jump. And it was one of those moments where I was just like, wow, I can totally see it would take you to a very dark place. A place where you can't find hope, where you don't know how you would fit in. And again, this puts her then in league with the other 7 soldiers that we've seen throughout this. And it's funny how this group would have made an amazing support group for each other. They would have all been, because they've all gone through these crazy issues. But out of her darkest situation, she finds a reason to hope. Someone needs her. She has a choice to pull into her own problems and walk away or step up, and the eternal hero comes through here. And she makes the right choice, saves them. And they brand her a hero by actions, not by powers, or that she told them she was one, but by her actions. That's the distinction. That's why she's a superhero. She ends the issue still trying to find herself and trying to make this situation into some new way of life. Cool character. Really cool character. Probably one of my favorites. Although, it's interesting right now, I would be hard-pressed to pick my favorite because I think I like the stylized aspect of all this. Each character has this kind of journey going on, and I really, really liked the first half of Volume 3.
Oh, yeah. As we keep saying, it's just the nature of what makes a hero. And we're getting these non-big name heroes. Now, granted, Z, yes, is a big name, but really, it's not until more recent stuff that I think she's really being used more as the hero type stuff. When this was going on, I took it that in this time in history, she wasn't a popular character. She wasn't being used a lot at this time in the DCU. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah.
So, okay, cool. So we have these non-heroes, and I'm using heroes in parentheses because they are really heroes, but these non-popular heroes telling us the nature of a hero, what it makes to be a hero.
Zatanna was probably the most well-known out of this batch. She would be known from being part of the Justice League, but not from like a solo series or anything like that. And she certainly wasn't an active member at the time this came out.
Yeah, and with each of these heroes, I like the fact that, especially these new ones, like we saw this with Guardian as well. We saw what made them, what drove them to be the hero, and then in the end, you see them step up and say, yes, I am a hero. Even Clarion, who the mischievous witch boy says at the end, I will be a soldier. It's this build-up of who they are, what they are, and why they are. I'm digging that about these characters.
We've heard the promise that after Final Crisis, we're going to see a little bit of a brighter DC Universe. And this gives me a lot of hope for that, because we're seeing here strong definitions of what a hero is throughout this series. And thematically, if this leads thematically into Final Crisis, you would think that the whole point of Final Crisis, and I think we're seeing that as we see Submit, as we see Resist, as we see things like, the Flash sequences in there, we're starting to see situations where hope is taken away, and then we're seeing people trying to find hope in the most hopeless of situations and making hope in places where by no means should there be hope available. And that's part of what I'm hoping thematically comes from Final Crisis, and how this, I hope, links into that. I think we're going to see what hope is in the DC Universe and what these people bring to the table. So I'm really, really curious to see thematically where that series goes. And this, in many ways, reading this now, again, with that going on, I'm noticing that connection of hope. I used the word hope probably more in this volume as we were looking over it than any other volume. But, I think because Final Crisis is affecting my viewing of this now. So it's interesting to kind of explore this. I'm glad we took the time that we did, how we we did volume 1, took a little breather, did volume 2, took a little breather. Now we're doing volume 3, and being able to take a look at the events that are going on in Final Crisis, we'll take a little breather after this, do volume 4. I think it'll be interesting to explore maybe how this book has changed based on it's an interesting study on how reading a series can change when you revisit it based on other reading that you're doing. So I don't know. Because I think we're seeing a lot of hope in their individual titles. A lot of, these characters being true heroes in their individual titles. And I'm liking that contrast to what's going on in Final Crisis. I don't know. Just kind of a little aside of something I noticed. I really enjoyed Volume 3 a great deal.
Can Batman escape? One hint. The worst is yet to come.
How's your foot?
I got that tingly going because it's falling asleep. So.
Are you?
Yeah, it happens to me sometimes when I sit wrong.
Want me to kick it?
No, I'm okay.
Sure?
I'll tough through. I can
wake it up.
No.
Jim, let's go ahead and do a Speeding Bullets segment. I wasn't going to do comics on this one just because I figured, I need to get this out tonight because our listeners have been very patient. But there's one book, it was because of the forum today, I wanted to talk about this. Action Comics number 871. We're continuing New Krypton as we're talking about it. And one of the things that I noticed at the end of New Krypton, and people in the forum noticed as well, and it was, one of those things at the end, Nightwing and Flamebird. Did you notice what Nightwing used as his powers?
Yes, I saw that, and I was like, oh my god.
Were you thinking possibly?
The tactical telekinetics, first thought that popped in my head was Connor.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my god, is he back? That would be so cool. How did it happen? I don't care. That was the first thought that popped in my head, dude.
Here's my thinking, that there's a couple options here. Is he in some way a clone, this guy? Not necessarily Connor. Was he? I guess these two, I have a few different possibilities. My first thought is, okay, maybe Connor got those powers because it is, for some Kryptonian DNA, a latent power that would showcase itself, which is why we're seeing Nightwing and Flamebird having the powers that they do. Are these two clones created as part of this cloning process that we're seeing going on? And that's part of the thing, with General Lane and then Cadmus and all those things. Is this part of that process that we've seen going on in New Krypton so far? Is he a direct clone of Connor Kent? Is he part of that same experimentation that brought Connor Kent in? I don't know. I've got a number of possibilities there where I'm thinking Connor got them because of the Kryptonian DNA. This is because of the cloning. Or something else, I don't know. Because we saw General Lane refers to the fact that he's got some kind of weapons that he's utilizing. And that's when we saw Doomsday. Right after he mentioned that, we saw Doomsday. I took that to mean he unleashed Doomsday.
Yeah, when in the that Guardian version, where the special, those things that were growing in some of the tanks, I said some of those look like they could be Doomsday. So I think, that Lane unleashed Doomsday. Now, I don't know if Cadmus created that Nightwing, but I'm thinking there's something to do with the fact that when you're able to successfully clone Kryptonian DNA, you get that type of powers.
Okay.
So I'm thinking that, my initial reaction, of course, was, oh my god, they brought Connor back. But now I'm like, they didn't bring Connor back. That's not Connor. That's
No, I don't take that either.
Somebody else. Now, granted, I would love for it to be Connor, and I really was fascinated by him going by Nightwing and Flamebird because of the whole his history that they have with the DC Universe and the whole history with Krypton.
And Kandor in particular.
Right. So I was like, wonder, this is... I'm thinking we're not going to get rid of these guys.
My reason why I'm thinking that there's a possibility, part of me thinks that they could be Kryptonian. They did, in fact, are part of the people from Kandor. So I do have that option as a possibility. But another part of me is thinking that they were created by Lane and crew or, Cadmus because of the fact that they specifically referenced we thought some of General Zod's cronies might come here, so we were waiting for you. Were they put in place then by people of Earth who were trying to, because of what happened in Last Sun, to make sure Zod doesn't get freed? I don't know.
Yeah, see, and they were inside the Fortress of Solitude, right? So how did they get access into the fortress unless... That's what I was thinking, maybe did Superman actually create them?
Know. And
Superman has them, that's because he even said when Superman was dealing with the Justice League, he's like, hey, don't worry, I got this covered. Maybe Soup has some backup that he has planned.
Sure.
So this is one of those things I'm like, I really want to know who this is because if this guy sticks around, what happens to the other Nightwing? What happens to Dick Grayson? Which we both have a theory on that. And, I'm thinking, we're going to see Dick Grayson stop being called Nightwing and start calling himself Red Robin, as a tie back to Bruce Wayne, as a tie back to who he is. He was Robin, but he's not the Robin. And I see him adopting the Red Robin costume, maybe slight modifications, showing this is who I am. Mm-hmm. And that would be a really cool thing, especially if this Nightwing stuck around. Because what would happen to this Nightwing? They're saying they're going to expand the Teen Titans roster, so maybe Nightwing and Flamebird are going to join the Teen Titans roster, which would make things really interesting for Tim and Cassie, having clones with similar powers to Connor. What would happen to them? So all these things, as soon as I saw, and this is just from that one-page panel, all these things are flying through my head going, what could happen here?
And part of me thinks, will they be a police force then of Kandor when Kandor gets shrunk back down? Yeah. Ultimately, I'm under the impression that Kandor's not staying like this. There's no way. We're going to see Kandor in a jar again.
Yeah. Or it's moved off planet to a city that has a planet that has a red sun, so that they don't have their powers anymore, and they're allowed to just develop the way they normally would if they had remained on Krypton. Something like that's going to happen.
I think we're going to see here, though, a well-defined reason why this group of people would choose to make an artificial red sun and isolate themselves from the society of Earth.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts. But it's interesting to say, because we're already seeing the breakdown right here.
It's starting because, and it naturally would, because you look at it, you're, a god among men, and are you going to look at them the same? Clark looks at them like his family, like his people, because he grew up as a kid. He grew up with them. You have these Kryptonians coming in, and you look at how weak and, frail humanity is. Naturally, it'd be a tough thing not to say, okay, I will rule you all. You should be, serving us because we're the superior being there. Peace to superior firepower and whatnot. They're not even superior firepower. They're, scientifically, they're leaps and bounds ahead of anything that, human society could come up with. So naturally, they would start thinking, hey, we should be the leaders. We should be running this place, not you.
We're seeing that agent again.
Yeah.
And we're seeing also the general from the Kryptonians, again acting a little bit off, just in the sense that they know a little bit more about what's going on, and they're playing for different sides. So I think we're going to see more information about them as they go along, and maybe their beliefs and things. I'm still convinced that there's going to be an interesting outcry of people against Kryptonians. Where I think there's going to be people who are a little bit closer because of the action of some of these Kryptonians. I'm not saying against Superman and Supergirl, don't get me wrong, but I think that there's going to be, over this particular Kandorian community, an outcry of people who are going to fear them because of who they are and their powers, because of what the actions that they're seeing at this point.
And I'd like to think that they'd all be good people, but people aren't all good.
Society in general.
Society in general, yeah. You look around, there's good people, bad people. We're all mixture.
We talked about it in Bulleteer.
Yeah, what's going to happen if you have a couple bad eggs within the Kandor community? Mm-hmm. So if this actually was happening in the real world, that would be the first thought that would pop in my head. I am a little bit more pessimistic. I wouldn't think, wow, all the world problems can be solved. We have so many Supermen out there. I would be thinking, we got a lot of people out there with Superman-like powers. What if they're not as cool as Superman? Can he even stop them? Can our heroes stop them? What are we going to do here? I would start looking for pieces of kryptonite to have handy.
Yeah. They're going on eBay. Batman the Brave and the Bold, the cartoon. Dude, the first episode of this one, I wasn't sure what this was going to be like, or how I was going to feel about it, because I enjoyed, to me, one of the pinnacle Batman animated shows is Batman the Animated Series. But throughout my life, I've had really good experiences with Batman. I watched the 60s show. I didn't know it was a spoof as a kid. I loved it. I watched the Filmation cartoons that followed afterwards. One was voiced by Adam West, and there was a later one. Both of those series were great growing up. Super Friends, and then, the Batman cartoon that was just released, recently. Now we got this one. And I was like, is this going to be, cheesy, or is it going to be a nice balance of all ages accessible, that with enough nods to the comics? I was really pleasantly surprised. We've definitely got a much more accessible Batman in this. So he's not as dark as the Batman we've got now, but he's definitely one that commands respect. So I liked that. they didn't go too far accessible with him, that he's accessible enough, but you still Batman, you still got that feel for him. That worked for me. On the forums, somebody mentioned, and excuse me for forgetting who, we had a conversation going, and somebody said that he could easily be replaced by Superman. I get a little bit of that vibe because he's really accessible and a little bit more friendly, so he's a little bit closer to that archetype, but I still got the Batman vibe from him, from different versions of Batman that we've seen over the years. So it worked for me. It worked enough for me because he was using the gadgets, and I really liked how he had all the different Batman gadgets. To me, it caught me right in the beginning when it opened up with Green Arrow. And we saw the inner dialogue of Bruce, where he was talking about how, the way that their banter is and their relationship is, and how they kind of sometimes don't see eye to eye, but there's nobody I'd rather have at my side in a battle. I loved that.
I will admit fully when I do something stupid. Mm-hmm. And when I first started watching this, I did something stupid. I didn't sit down and watch it through and enjoy it. Mm-hmm. I initially started, okay, I'm going to take some notes. And when that first opening sequence, I paused it, and I'm like, what the heck are they doing? Because they did the classic villain rant that I always hate, right, where he's like, I have to go on to my next job. Ha ha ha, I will leave you. Now, granted, his next job was 1 minute. It was 1 minute before midnight. His next job was at midnight. So why was he leaving them alone for a minute? Of course, Batman gets out. They win. And I was just getting ready to start doing this massive tirade where I'm like, what the heck are they doing? And as halfway through the massive tirade, I stopped my writing, and I hit play, and then it continued on. And we get Bruce's inner dialogue. And I saw why they did that. And I was like, oh, I'm such an idiot. This is okay. Yeah, this is cool. This is kind of like, this is more like the Silver Age type style, but it has the modern attention. Yeah. We see the modern detective. We see the modern, ties and whatnot to society that, I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. I'm digging this.
It's Silver Age sensibility, but the dialogue is today.
Exactly.
And that's no insult to the Silver Age. It's just a matter of Silver Age was written how many years ago, and now you're seeing today. There is going to be a dialogue change. There's a dialogue change between 80s and today. I'm a big fan of the 80s comics, but, let's be honest with you. If you're reading 80s comics today, not all of them hold up as well because of how long ago it was. I think it wasn't that long ago because it was in my lifetime. I'm like, well, I don't know. 70s comics, same things. Not all 70s comics hold up as well. But this is a great example of something where if you change the dialogue, you can pull these... We saw that in All-Star Superman, and I think we're seeing a little bit of that here, where you can take these concepts, you can modernize them. What really worked for me, though, then, is when they brought in Blue Beetle.
Oh, God, dude. You know what?
They nailed him.
Yeah, they nailed him. Now, I love Team Beetle, but the fact that, he has that secret identity and he's got to deal with that, I liked it. I was like, you know what? It was a neat little thing with him, and his buddy saying, hey, couldn't you see me as a hero? Geek detector, geek detector. I like that.
But I like that they jumped back to his early origin.
Yeah.
And actually pulled it accurately from the... It felt like it could have easily been plugged into the original comic when it was out. And it was funny because Blue Beetle's being canceled, the comic. We had Mr. Chibi, who he had an interesting rant on the forum. If you take a look on the forums where that's being discussed, where he was saying, this is the character that brought me into comics. Why would you cancel it now if he's going to be in a high-profile cartoon? He's got a certain point there, because this is a really good book right now that I'm like, well, maybe now that you got him in the media, you should give people a chance to
read him and get into him.
Yeah. Who saw the cartoon, because I bet you a lot more people saw the half-hour cartoon that are comic readers than maybe have given a try to Blue Beetle. So maybe you can pick up a few extra readers at this point. I'm hoping that maybe there's on that, and I know I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here, on that theme, Manhunter was saved before because of the letter writing campaign. People really made an outcry because of it. Comics have been saved before, and I'm not talking about emails. I'm talking about writing a physical letter and mailing it in. Do yourself a favor, if you're a fan of Blue Beetle, if you're a fan of Manhunter, these books are being canceled. Do yourself a favor and write in. Birds of Prey is probably one that I would consider doing it for, too. Just because of the fact that I think, Birds of Prey, as a concept, should be saved. It's... Obviously, they're taking the Gotham characters, the Gotham-related characters, and changing them. So Robin and Nightwing, I'm kind of like, it's clear that it looks like the creative teams are sticking around. So This is story-driven as a decision, and it looks like Oracle's probably being brought back into that universe. So I'm like, all right, I can go with that, and I could go into that, and Huntress could easily be brought back in to a certain extent too. But I think the concept of Birds of Prey for strong female characters, I've always liked having a just female team. It's kind of an interesting showcase for some characters.
And
at the time when it came out, Birds of Prey, really, Black Canary, she had a long history, but she grew as a character through that series. And I got into her as a character because of that series. I always liked her with Green Arrow. I always liked her team-ups and all that, but I got really into her. I always liked the Barbara Gordon Batgirl. I really got into Oracle in Birds of Prey as I was reading that, from Chuck Dixon's run straight on through Gail Simone's. Terry Moore did a run on there. I mean, it was interesting. Writers really did some showcasing of these characters, and I really liked it. Tony Bedard's run really started to grow on me. I'm really sad this is being canceled. I liked what Sean McKeever was doing.
No, I don't know. I'm a little upset about losing Birds of Prey because it's a comic cast of all females, but it wasn't like just written for females. It was written for a comic book fan. Just your characters happen to be female, and there's going to be some other tie-ins that are more, a female associated, character and how they would deal with it, but it's still a really cool, story and really cool adventures that I was reading. I'm a little upset by that one.
I'm also tentative, though, because they're saying that Greg Rucka is going to be involved in a Bat project of some sort.
Yeah. I'm
keeping my fingers crossed that it's going to be some sort of, Batwoman, The Question, maybe Oracle, who knows? Some of the female, maybe that'll be a more Gotham-based female group and go back to that type of concept and take some of these characters and maybe start something new in that direction. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. And if not that book, maybe another one. So I'm not at the point where I'm throwing my books against the wall or anything like that. I'm disappointed when I heard all 3 cancellations, but the timing, and this was mentioned on the forum by various people, the timing has got to be story-driven, and it is. It's got to be. Because the creative teams have already kind of popped onto sites. I know that on one of our forum threads, somebody said that they read somewhere that Tomasi and Nicieza are both staying with the Bat universe afterwards. So you got to think that they're going to be taking on the logical successors to these books,
right?
Thematically,
I'm thinking that's going to happen. And the other thing I was thinking is, what if they're going to pull Barbara and put her maybe with the JLA?
Well, they're giving her a mini-series.
Yeah, they're giving her a mini, which, if you like Birds of Prey, you got to pick that up. You got to, show the love for Oracle. That is, she's a character that they can't get rid of. And we've seen her tie so well into other titles that I could very easily see her.
She was brilliant.
Yeah.
I loved that issue.
I know, and it's just... a lot, and even the stuff where it's just Barbara by herself, Barbara on her own, where it's Barbara, doing what she's got to do. She was trained by the Bat, and she is the daughter of a police commissioner. She is all these really cool, tough female character. Yeah, she's in a chair, but guess what? That doesn't slow her down. It doesn't stop her because she is a hero. She steps up, she knuckles up, she does what needs to be done. And that is always the thing I love about the character, that I don't want to lose that with her. And I'm thinking different ways they could pull her into different titles. Like, she could be, working out of the Watchtower for the JLA. She could be with the Titans, helping, Dick out with that team. There's so many usage of her that they could have her as a regular in a character that I'm hoping we're not going to see her as a part-time character in a series. If she was, I'll take that because I want to see this character. But part of the thing I really digged about Birds of Prey was she was the main character. Yeah. Black Canary, Misfit, and Manhunter when she was in there, and there's all these other cool characters. But for me, Birds of Prey is Barbara Gordon. It's Oracle. And that's the thing that always gets me.
Here's where we differ drastically because of how much we read Birds of Prey.
Right, exactly.
When Birds of Prey first started, it really was Barbara Gordon and Black Canary. There were other characters that would team up with them, but that was the squad. So I've got an incredible attachment to Black Canary in that concept. So the issues where Dinah comes back and they do kind of a nod to that relationship. Right. It's really important when we see those two characters in any book, where they've had them appear together in any book. It's really important to me to see that. Final Crisis, we talked about it, where we got to see the two of them interacting again because of her being the leader of the Justice League and Barbara being brought in because of what was going on with tech and shutting down the internet. Those were moments where I'm like, yes, it makes sense to have these two together. They would naturally gravitate towards each other because of the strong relationship. It's important to me to see that. Their relationship to me is something I'm very protective of, and it's kudos to the writers that have worked on those two as characters, because I really do link those two together as strong friends, the same way that I link Hal and Ollie.
Yeah.
That relationship is just as important to me because of that great run of Birds of Prey. So it's funny how that relationship is just as much of an iconic one for me now as those two are. So it's cool. It's really a cool thing. I'm Bat Universe. I'm very protective of it, and I've been enjoying it so much. Nightwing and Robin have been absolutely, the Sons of Batman, the side books of them have become, what the nice part is? They aren't just fluff titles right now. So I'm thrilled, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that the creative teams on both of those books are for sure locked in. I haven't read it. I know on the forum other people said that they read that, from forum postings from the creators, that they're going to be on those books. I don't really, at the moment, need to have 100% verification on that. I'm keeping my fingers crossed for all involved on those two books. And that's probably the most sincere compliment. It's not so much that I'm sitting here saying I want another Dick Grayson book, I want another Tim Drake book, or Tim Wayne book, whatever you want to call them. I want those two particular creative teams to continue on working with these characters, because what a great job they've been doing with them. And that's where right now I'm not frustrated. I'm tentatively watching, like, okay, I'm totally believing this is story driven. I'm putting a ton of faith in that. I will be sorely disappointed if it's not, but I'm thinking it is. The timing is just, they're not going to cancel all three of those books. Nightwing sales are too high.
Yeah, I'm hoping. I'm really hoping, and I don't know. If there's same creative staff is staying on there, I'll be a lot more happy, a lot calmer. I'm like, okay, this is just the next, part 2.
I'm tense.
But I am a little nervous. I am a little bit going, okay, what's going on here, guys? You're messing with some of my favorite characters here.
Yeah. I'm tense in the way you should be when you care about something. And this is funny. Superman people, you'll get this when they play around with Clark's universe and things like that. I get upset when they mess with Clark too. He's an iconic character that I really care about. But this is different. This is Batman. I'm like, for me, I mean, you've heard me with All-Star Batman and Robin. I'm picking up the book. I love the book. But you've heard me go on insane rants about, okay, Sean, you're saying you love the book, but you keep going on and on about Batman. This is a character that, for me, I get psycho over. This is my one. So I'm like tense, and I can't totally explain to you why, but I just want to say to anybody creatively that out there that knows or works with anybody who's working on Nightwing or Robin right now, I want you to stay in the Bat universe, because I'm really excited. I'm excited to hear Greg Rucka's coming back, because I really enjoyed Greg Rucka when he worked at Gotham Central. Was stellar. His work when he was working on the Bat books, he and Ed Brubaker were doing Batman and Detective Comics respectively. That was stellar work. So hearing Greg Rucka is going to be having some say in the Bat universe, working on some Bat universe book, has me super excited. So that is an exciting news for me. Tony Bedard, I'm going to be excited to see where Tony Bedard goes, because I don't know if it's going to be back to the Bat universe or we're going to see him go somewhere else, but I've enjoyed Tony Bedard's work in the DC universe so far. I've always liked Tony Bedard. His Valiant stuff I keep referring back to, but that was my first real exposure to his name, and I think he's a talent that I think is very underrated. See more Tony Bedard as well. If it's in the Bat universe, great. If it's not, I'm gonna follow where he goes as well. So just kind of like my little side rant on them. But it's obviously an area I'm very passionate about.
Very, very.
The forum has been really exciting lately with this, though, and I can't recommend enough if you're not a part of the forum, or if you are a part of the forum, you haven't popped by in a while, feel free at any point in time to start new topics and new threads. I try to, like at Nightwing 150, I started a thread on there just because I happen to be doing it. But I try to monitor all the threads, and I'll pop in and give my 2 cents worth. Obviously, from my comments here, I read everything that I can. Obviously, with the fact that Jim and I are trying to, with our work schedules and everything, get the show together, it's hard for us to keep up with everything. The forum's kind of grown beyond us, and I think that's another area where I want to thank our listeners. Anybody who's posting in the forum, participating in discussions, taking time to do that, it's a lot of fun to see the life that goes into the forum. And you guys drive that more than we do. I post up, as much as I can from the show, and then I try to comment to as many people's comments, if not all of them, on the episodes. But there's new threads that pop up all the time that are from you guys generating them. Thank you so much. Because it really, to me, it's exciting to see our community kind of taking the show beyond the show and kind of taking it upon yourselves to kind of just, take our forum community to a place. You guys are taking the community beyond anywhere Jim and I could, and I think that's really cool. So thank you guys for that. Just kind of a little aside. Anyway, Brave and the Bold. We talked about. I'm like, wow. How did we get
went off on
this tangent?
Way tangent?
And I started looking back at my notes. I'm like, Brave and the Bold. I really enjoyed the whole. It started out as Batman trying to decide whether or not Jaime was ready to be trained to be, to take that step to be a hero. Could he be a hero? And I liked the cool part where through this whole relationship, he saw that he was a hero, and he acknowledges that. The inner dialogue was great, and I hope that's going to be a running theme on the show, that we're going to be seeing more of Batman's inner dialogue as he analyzes these people, because Batman's the one we're latched onto. He is analyzing the heroes that maybe people don't know as well, and I thought that was a brilliant way to write this series, in the sense that we get to know them through the eyes of Batman, but in many ways it's like we're sort of sucker I am for this.
Batman.
We're hanging with Batman. Yeah. That was cool.
Yeah. And, there was little stuff in there that, made me go, come on. But it's a cartoon. It was fun. So,
you know what, though?
I did like that seeing Jaime. We not only got an introduction to who this character is, but we saw him grow and become the hero. It's throughout the process, he learns that the most valuable and powerful weapon in any hero's roster isn't, super freaky blasters or batarangs or anything. It's the mind. You got to think things through. You're presented with a problem. You got to deal with it, and I like that. It was just that inner.
Kanjuro being the villain.
That was kind of cool.
Right from the DC universe. From that, I liked when they went into space. At first, I was groaning. I'm like, I don't want to see Batman in space and that type of thing. But because it goes back to Silver Age. Yeah. But where it worked was. I started groaning at first, and then I'm like, okay, this is really cool. They have the small detail, like the mask on Batman's face, showing that there has to be some way for him to breathe, and I like that it was Blue Beetle. The way that his suit originally worked, we saw him having these bizarre blackouts where the suit would take him places when he was out of control very early on in his origin, and we see here that the suit took control of him and sent them both to this other universe. And we got I love the bit where Batman was referred to as the sidekick.
Yeah.
And then they erected a statue to him in the end, and it was a little bit smaller, and I liked the theme, too, of the people and the planet having to be inspired by these guys to find their own power within. And that, in the end, it was these two inspiring this race to overcome Kanjuro, that it was really they won.
Yeah.
They beat the bad guys, and Batman and Blue Beetle were more of the shining example that they followed. I liked that.
Yeah, it was funny because I chuckled, with Blue Beetle when he's trying to give him his motivational speech, and he had no idea. I was half expecting him to go, and I live by a van down by the river, I'm like, dude, you're not a motivational speaker. Give it up, man.
And fall through a coffee table?
Exactly. Yeah. That's how good he was doing in there. But it's, little funny moments like that. And in the end, he is a hero. In the end, Absolutely. He does motivate. I was like, really cool message that it gave, look for the power within, and you don't have to have superpowers to be a hero. You just have to do the right thing. And I was like, yeah, this is cool stories again.
It's funny when you're talking like that, look with the power within, I hear like 80s cartoon theme music popping
Exactly.
out. Blue Beetle, he's a hero from another planet.
It's bringing back now the rest of the story, and it's I was digging that.
It was fun.
Man.
It was a fun series. What I liked about it is it's the same thing I'm saying about a lot of the Johnny DC titles right now. What I'm enjoying about them is they're accessible, but they're fun. And there's stuff that you can, I felt like I'm going to watch this series next week, not because I have to for the show, because I don't. We're not, we cover the comics more than anything else. But I'm going to watch this next week because I really had fun with this. So we're going to talk about this again, I'm sure, because of the fact that we're just kind of popping in and out watching these episodes. So I really had that much fun with this that I'm on for next week. Very different in tone from Batman the Animated Series. So, fans of that, just be warned if you didn't watch the first episode, it's lighter. It's definitely lighter in tone, but it's a good series, and it's great showcases of characters that kids today wouldn't know. People are always saying, like, how are kids going to get introduced to the DC Universe? This is the way. This is the way.
And I was on Wiki, and it had list of different people voices because when the Beatles' voice was going, I'm like, who is that? So I had to look and see. But a future episode is going to have Wildcat, and he is going to be voiced by R. Lee Ermey.
Oh,
Hoorah!
Nice.
Yes.
Oh, nice. So that's
I'm like, oh, that's going to be cool. So I've got even more to look forward to.
Yeah. So it's definitely see that show. Actually, that shows how much you enjoyed it. That you even bothered to look and see what future episodes would be like.
It's set up on the DVR record series. So,
did you notice any other characters that were making an appearance?
Plastic Man is next week.
Yeah.
So that should be kind of fun.
Yeah. You said Wildcat.
Yeah, Wildcat, and I don't remember who the they had 3 on there. So I can't remember.
You went further than I did. I mean, I'm interested. I'm going to be enjoying that. I want to talk a little bit about the Mortal Kombat versus DCU game. Just real quick, if I could, because I've had a chance to spend some time with it. Now, I actually beat the whole DC Universe story mode, it's a pretty lengthy story mode. It's a fighting game, so it's not a role playing game. So you can beat it in like a few hours. The nice thing I like about this story mode is you can save it at any time after you win a battle. So you have the option to save it, and then it'll keep the storyline going for you, so you don't have to go back to the beginning every time. So that was really, I think, a nice feature in this game. There's 2 story modes. There's the Mortal Kombat story mode where you play as Mortal Kombat characters, and there's the DC Universe story mode where you play as the DC Universe characters. And the concept, I'll just give a basic concept of the story. The idea is that and this is right in the beginning of it. You'll find these pictures, the opening videos, I'm sure, are online because it's the opening introduction to the story mode. Before the first chapter kicks off, Superman's battling Darkseid with Lex Luthor there. It's been a devastating battle in Metropolis. Darkseid's trying to escape in a boob tube. Superman's heat vision hits Darkseid. Because Darkseid's in the middle of creating it, the distraction and the resulting energy, causes the boom tube to destabilize. In the mirror universe and this is the cool thing about the storylines in this, the storyline in the Mortal Kombat version parallels this. So I want to say it's Shao Kahn, or it's Darkseid and Kahn from the Mortal Kombat universe. They merge because of this happening. Because he's trying to use magic to escape from a situation, and Raiden on the other side hits him, and because both events happen at the same time, it causes both of them to merge and causes a destabilization where the 2 universes are trying to combine. So the Mortal Kombat Earth is trying to combine with our Earth. So they're overlapping. There's a really, really funny bit where the Joker yells out, "God!" from Star Trek 2.
Yeah.
And it was just such a really funny moment. But the storyline continues. I'm not going to spoil the storyline beyond that. It's broken into chapters. Each chapter is about 4 battles, but in between each battle, there's cutscenes continuing the story and introducing the next battle and how it happens. And it makes sense of why Superman's depowered. A little bit, enough so that he would fit, fighting certain characters. Captain Marvel is absolutely stellar in the whole thing. You can play as Captain Marvel and call Shazam's lightning down. I'm a fighting game fan, but I am not a fighting game expert, so to say, in the sense that I play fighting games and I do the power moves that I can, easily, but I'm not the one, like in Mortal Kombat, I can't do all the fatalities because there's so many button presses to do it. It's just something that I enjoy following the stories. I'm more a story-driven player. So I will play fighting games to get to the ending cutscenes and to follow the storyline. So I learn enough moves that I can successfully beat the computer, and that's enough for me. If I can beat the big boss at the end, yeah, success. Yeah. I don't go the extra mile of mastering it, though. This is easy to pick up and play. It's easy to do power moves without reading the manual, but then you can read the manual or pull them up on your screen and do moves like you would expect Batman to do or Superman to do and things like that. The question is it the greatest fighting game of all time? No. Is it a really good fighting game? Yes. So it falls into that category. For me, it gets extra credit because it's really strong usage of DC Universe characters where you feel like you're actually fighting as them. I was doing speed moves as a Flash very easily.
Cool.
And, each DC Universe character plays differently. You can use Batarangs with Batman. You can use Wonder Woman's lasso. But you use moves that seem to make sense for each character. And, it was easy to pick up I'm finished the DC Universe storyline now. Now I'm playing the Mortal Kombat one, and that's where I know that I'm far enough in the Mortal Kombat one that I realize that this parallels the storyline and Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti were involved in the storyline.
Oh, cool.
So it's pretty accurate to the DC Universe. The costumes are changed a little bit for some of the characters. Like GL's costume is very close to our GL's, but I think they were touched up a little bit to be more visually pleasing on a computer screen, a TV screen, versus in a comic book. So I think they were done for that purpose.
Okay.
Just slight art, like it's Hal Jordan. There's no doubt in it. You don't feel like he looks clearly like Hal. Slight little tweaks to his costume. The way to compare it would be the difference between Hal's original costume and the changes they made post Rebirth. Where there were slight little tweaks to his costume. There's slight little tweaks to Hal's costume. He doesn't look like he's got Kyle's costume on, for example. Looks still like Hal's costume with just slight little modifications for this particular medium. If it would, like the movie versions are slightly different.
Right,
costumes.
yeah.
So that's
sense.
probably the best
No
comparison.
biggie. Okay.
Well, I don't want people to think, though, like, wow, they're really out there and, oh, my God, I'm going to be angry about that. It's a fun game. Now, I've only played through right now the story mode of the DC Universe, and I put a lot of time in this game, and I'm into the first couple chapters of the Mortal Kombat version. Each character that you play through and you play through almost all the characters in each side, not all of them, but pretty close to all of them, and they've each got their own chapters that kind of lead into each other. So you'll play a few chapters as Batman, you'll play a few chapters as the Flash, you'll play a few chapters as Captain Marvel, you'll play a few as Wonder Woman, then you start playing a few as the bad guys. Because the bad guys need to team up with the good guys. And, because of what's going on to the world.
Yeah.
But you get some realistic Joker in this, where how would the Joker react to all this? And he reacts the way you would expect the Joker to react, which is really cool. It's you're like, all right, Joker's an agent of chaos, so, how's he going to react to all this? Well, the way the Joker naturally would. And it's fun because they're accurately written. So you actually feel like you're playing as these characters because the storyline's framing them. So it's a fun game. Like I said, for video game purists, is it the greatest fighting game ever? There's a lot of really stellar. There's the Dead or Alive series. That's probably one of the pinnacle games. There's stuff like Tekken and Soul Calibur that are considered the cutting edge of fighting games. This is a really, really good fighting game. I don't know if you're looking for just the game value of it, but if you add the storyline and the heroes and the pick up and play value of this and the fact you can play online, there's an arcade mode that has for each character, including the hidden characters, a story ending. So there's a reason to play through as each character. There's a lot of replay value to this. Then there's another combat mode. It's a combat combo mode of some sort. I haven't played any of that yet. There's a training mode in it, and then there's online. So you get a lot of value for this game. I would say for DC fans, if you're not ready on what I'm saying to pick it up, rent it. I know games are expensive right now for your next-gen systems, so I can see somebody saying, well, Sean, as you said, might not be your favorite. I would at least rent it to give it a shot, because to me, I bought the collector's edition, which was $10 more. I got the extra comic book that comes with it. There's a digital version of the comic. There's an extra CD in the whole thing, and there's a lithograph done by Alex Ross in there. So for me, that was worth it, and I got a T-shirt. Now, it was $10 more, but, I'm a collector. I mean, it's a DC game. It's very rare that we've had really good DC games. This is a good DC game.
now, have you unlocked any secret
Darkseid.
Characters? You did? Okay.
Well, you unlock Darkseid at the end of the first story mode. Then the other one is... I think it's Shao Kahn, and if I'm wrong, Mortal Kombat fans, please excuse me. I'm more of the DC fan. I've played Mortal Kombat. I've played the old 2D versions of it, but if you ask me to remember, I'm more familiar with Kano and Liu Kang because I used to always play them. But if you ask me the big boss, I don't know. I played it more in the arcade than I did at home. I couldn't tell you that one, but it felt very Mortal Kombat in the way you played. It was fun. It's a fun game.
Cool.
It's worth it. The DC thing added a big bonus for me though. And I'm excited now with the Batman game that's going to be coming out, eventually, that one that's going to be, a third-person, first-person adventure. I'm like, wow, I'm excited. And then we got the DC MMO. It's like, finally, we're getting some good DC games out there. I'm loving the Marvel's games. I got the Spider-Man Web of Shadows, a good game. I like this better.
I'm now I got to pick up some of these console systems, just because these games are sounding cool. And I never really was that much into Mortal Kombat because I used to get just handed to me. So I don't know. This is something I want to look up. I want to think about. I don't know.
And keep in mind, like I said, I am not a diehard the fighting games I usually pick up. I pick up the wrestling games. Those tend to be the ones I'll spend more time on and master the individual moves. This one, I liked it enough that I'm trying to master individual moves. After I'm done with the storylines, I will go through and play the arcade mode with each of the characters and try to master as much of them as I can, because it was really fun to call down the thunder from Shazam, to do the thunder clap with his hands, to start throwing the lasso with Diana, to do speed moves with the Flash. So I'm going to try to learn as many of the superpower moves as I can. I was throwing batarangs with Batman. That stuff was fun. You can, the levels are multi-tiered, so you can push people over the edge. Knock them over the edge at different points, and you're fighting midair. And if you time it right, you get to do a super power move where you win and you do super damage to them because of the distance you're knocking them down from. It's just cool things like that. It's really an interesting game. So there's settings like Gotham and stuff like that, and the settings are pretty sharp looking. Kudos to all the people that wrote the storyline, though, because I'm very story driven in these games, as well as the visual, and the storyline is fun. It's a good storyline. It feels very comic booky. It feels like when they do good, decent crossovers between two different universes in comics. So it feels like that type of storyline. So cool. I think you'll have a lot of fun with it. And I was glad that they pulled in Gray and Palmiotti, because those guys just seem to nail characters, and they're very true. So I definitely, at the very least, if you're on the fence about it, definitely do yourself a favor and at least rent it to check it out if you're a DC fan, because that for me, it was like, yes, finally. So it's cool. Can we talk just a little bit of Smallville? I'm. It's funny that I'm even saying that, because we're like at 8:53 right now, and I've got to edit this tonight. But Smallville lately has been so good. I know you didn't watch last week's episode, the one with Chloe and
right.
The memory one. So, and I'm biting my tongue because I really want to talk about that, but we'll definitely talk about that next week. Art Lyon contacted us, and I sent him an email back. Art's our Smallville go-to guy usually, and we're going to be doing a Smallville episode. What we'll probably do is, I think the next week's episode is supposed to be the mid-season break. So if Art is able to with his schedule, and it's hard because, anybody creative in comics,
it's tough.
Their schedules are going to fluctuate. So if Art's able to join us, I would really like to have him come on. We could do like a mid-season kind of talk about all this. But the episode you saw most recently was the one in the Phantom Zone with Kara, and that was cool. And
the big thing with me this season, anytime they have the glimpses and little teases of the future, it really gets me like in the Phantom Zone episode when Lois is a little bit down, Clark's like, come on, no one can beat Lois and Clark. And I'm like, yes! There's been so many times when you see the beginnings of Clark the superhero. You see the birth of Superman, and I'm like really excited we're getting it. We're gonna see. I don't know if we'll ever see the tights, or if we'll ever see him fly off. I don't care. We're seeing the build to it that I know what's going to happen next.
Wait till you see the episode you haven't seen yet, though.
Okay.
And this isn't going to spoil anything, but you can see that this is leading to, at the very least, if this is the last season, which I don't know if it is or not, they are leading it in the direction where this could comfortably be a nod to where it's going to go.
Right.
And they've been exploring that in Green Arrow recently, with the identity issues. Yeah. In that episode where, Jimmy is on to him and Green Arrow's had to step in and, kind of help keep that identity secret and that type of thing, where Green Arrow's wearing the cape and the blue and all that, I was like, yes. I'm like, oh. And Clark makes that comment, I'm never going to wear a cape.
Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of aerodynamic. You may like it.
Yeah. I mean, that was just cool little moments where they're making nods to the future. Green Arrow's development in this has been a particular strength as well. I really like him. Like, this would be, if they're looking for a series to spin out of this, Green Arrow's it. What are we doing? I
Green
think it was
Arrow, and I'd have him go to Star City and show up at Star City, and we see the birth of Green Arrow in Star City. Maybe I do want to see this guy grow out a goatee, though. I'm like, I am missing not having the goatee on Green Arrow.
Early on have one.
Yeah, I know, but I would like to see, just see him, even if they have it just on for 1 second, he sits there and he looks, and he shaves it off, kind of like a little comment about with the cape type thing or something like that. It's
Life in the Gutter. I think Mandy mentioned in there, and if not, I apologize, Mandy. I've been reading a lot of stuff I've been enjoying about Smallville, but she did some really cool commentary on just television shows and Smallville in general. Where she mentioned about the Grayson series that before they announced it was canceled, that some thoughts on that, and she talked about possibly spinning out Green Arrow, and I would love to see that because I really think Justin Hartley, and if I'm butchering his name, I apologize because I think that's who it is that's playing Green Arrow. He's really good in that role. I mean, he's nailing Ollie, and Ollie would be a wonderful series to spin out of this.
Yeah, and they had the Aquaman pilot that they released it, and I saw it on YouTube and all that. And they had him playing Aquaman, and I like that. I think he's a pretty good actor. He's kind of
what they call Mercy Reef or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And it was, but I was like, you know what? He's got some chops there, and he embraces the comic bookish aspect of a comic book hero that you're playing, and you need to have that. And so, I definitely, I would follow, definitely a spin-off with him, or even just anything else he's in, I'd probably follow.
John Jones, the detective. That, to me, is a strength. Again, we're doing more comic book nods. That's what the strength of this season is. We're doing more and more comic book nods, where we're seeing more and more, we're seeing the birth of Doomsday. We're seeing, just those type of things coming out of this, where when Lois comes out of the Phantom Zone, we see her interacting. She's been, by Zod's wife, she's been... And it's a nod back. You see in New Krypton right now references to how Doomsday was created, and we're seeing this is pretty accurate to that. It's, to me, this season has been great because we're getting closer and closer to the comic book. Yeah, they're doing it Smallville and all that, and I'm fine with that. But those little nods, and when they're done correctly in theme and tone, like I said, I like Black Canary much better this season than I liked her in her initial appearances.
Yeah, she's they're making her a little bit more like the comic book,
right?
And I do want to see the return of Bart. I do too. Bring back Impulse, bring back Cyborg, and even Aquaman. I liked Aquaman. I thought he did well job with it. But I do like the fact that they keep referring to the group. They keep mentioning the team, so it's not just a forgotten thing. They are out there, and it leads to that we will eventually see it. And I know one of probably the big complaints people may have is that no Batman and stuff like that. I don't need to see Bruce Wayne in this. Would I like to see him? Yes. But I don't need him in there. This is a well-kept universe. It's an Elseworld. I like Elseworld stories, so I have no problem with this. This is, though, true to Superman. This is true to my hero that I enjoy reading and seeing. And this guy that we're seeing grow and become the hero, he could be the natural progression into wearing the tights, into being Superman.
If this is truly the last season, I think Warner Brothers would be hard-pressed. Why wouldn't you look at seeing what you can do to lock down these actors, and this is the way you relaunch. They're saying right now that they're trying to relaunch and revitalize the film series. Why aren't you looking at this? Maybe they are, and we're not knowing it. But to me, this would seem like the logical thing. Okay, end off this season by getting it right to the point where he's ready to don the tights. And do it on film.
Yeah.
Do it on film. This guy's ready. This guy's a really good actor in the show. Erica Durance, I got to say, I wasn't sure, with her at Lois when she was first introduced, I'm like, wow, is the chemistry going to be there or anything like that? And I'm glad that it wasn't, because you know what? It made it all the more powerful now when we're seeing the two of them have chemistry together and that it is working, and you see the little nods and you've softened her up without losing that hard-edged Lois that we've gotten there. I really am liking their relationship, and they feel good together. It's one of those things where I can see why Clark would fall for her and where it would go. It's because she's become a lot less annoying and more like the Lois that we're used to, but it was far more interesting because we saw her development into that as well. So I'm glad they introduced her as early as they did and developed her as a character in the little episodes that they were doing early on with her, because she's become a very interesting actor. And Chloe's brilliant. This show would lead right to the films. I don't know why.
We got a definite solid tie-in, and just I could
do it.
Yeah, I want.
That's what you go with. I mean,
come on, guys.
You've got the Smallville audience already. If you go big screen with it, and then that's when you take in and you bring. You can't tell me that you're not going to get Lex to come back.
Yeah.
If you're gonna, Michael Rosenbaum, bring him back for the films. Go that route. But, Brainiac, they've got Brainiac. They've done they did the right thing. They're starting to bring in a Doomsday. They got a Brainiac. They're not putting all their eggs in one basket. They're realizing, okay, if we're going to keep going with this, we've got to start going back to the mythos. Martian Manhunter, bring these guys in. Yeah, we're going to, do them up a little bit for this
universe. They're tweaking it, but hey, it's okay.
It's working right now. So, I don't know. I haven't. I keep seeing mixed reactions this season, but to me, it's kind of like they've revitalized and reinvigorated it for me by doing more comic book related stuff in this one. So I would love to see this either have another season or lead into films. So just kind of my little mini rant. Good stuff. Kara, Kara. I'm glad they brought her back. I was so afraid they were going to leave that hanging. With her stuck in the Phantom Zone. I was so glad to see this episode that kind of tied up that storyline, had her go off looking for Kandor. It made sense. We showed her, again, in her progression over time as a strong character. I like how she was trying to leave him behind, but we saw Clark saying, we are leaving together. He brought her back. He saved her. When she was supposed to save him, showing again why she would look up to him. Yeah. And I like how their relationship kind of has come full circle, where they couldn't get along, they couldn't connect, but then we saw them connect. And it parallels so much of what we're seeing that's so good about Supergirl right now, because we've seen her become a likable character. This Supergirl has become a likable character as well. And I'm very Smallville happy right now. I look forward to it every week. I think it's just a really well-written show, and they've done a good job of doing a universe that's outside where they tweak it. And I think they've gotten a little bit closer to the comics. So, just kind of my thoughts. And there was one little comment in episode 139's thread by Skid Jam. And I've been thinking about this all day, and it's really kudos to him, because I don't want him to think... It's funny, when I answer things in the forum, I'm always leery afterwards about what my tone comes off at, because you know how I rant about things? But I do it on this show, and it's like literally I'm ranting because I'm excited about the topic. But on the forums, I read it back sometimes. I'm like, I sound like I'm angry. I wasn't. He did ask this good question. He said, when I hear you and Jim get so enthusiastic as you're talking about the Black Lightning series, he goes, I'm glad that you guys aren't an editorial, because you'd say yes to everything. And I told him, I said, that's really probably the I said, I don't know that I would be good in editorial at DC ever. I wouldn't hire me, because I would probably be the opposite. We talk about Batman sometimes. There's things going in RIP right now. There's things going on in the Bat universe. I would never approve.
Oh, God, yeah. There's some stuff that, if I was an editor and if I had the power to control it, I would say, no way. You're not
Ted
doing
Kord
that.
would have never died under my watch. But see, I say that, and those are things that led to the creation of the New Blue Beetle. I love the New Blue Beetle. So there's things that have happened over that led to that wonderful Booster Gold story. So it was a good move, because the storytelling that spun out of it has been really cool. I've enjoyed them. So there was a good reason to do it. It led to the kickoff to a series of events. If I was an editorial, the Flash, Barry Allen would have never died to begin with. But that's part of the problem. I'm too much of a fanboy. Now, I've since thought about it since I responded to this today. The honest reality, if it was my job to be an editor there, and this is why I never would want to work in comics, I would probably take my job so seriously that I would, I would be a lot more critical than I am now. I read my comics for enjoyment. I look for that purpose. I walk in with that attitude and mood. My comics are my escape from work where, I love my job. I'm a school teacher. I adore my job, so it's not an issue with that. But like any job that we all do, there's good and bad things. There's days that are stressful and things like that. When my comic box comes, that is my time. That is my escape. That is where writers and artists and creative teams pull me into amazing worlds where I just kind of fall into them and I absorb them like a sponge. I want that for my comics. I don't want to work in comics because that is what comics are for me. I love my career. I'm happy where I'm at. I'm not looking to break into comics. It's not, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong for anybody that is. I think that's something where people need to have a passion to break into it. And there's a lot of people that is their number one goal. They have a passion for it, and I hope you get it, because I'm passionate about my job, and I want anybody who is passionate about something to be able to do it, because I wouldn't give up my job any day of the week. And, I want everybody to have that kind of experience. But for me, this fills a different role in my life, in a different place. It's why I podcast about it, because I get more enjoyment out of it. Because I get to talk to you about it, and I get to talk to everybody else, and then we get voicemails, and then we get to, I'm talking about a forum comment that I read today from Skajam he made some very good points as far as in this mode. As a fan, I would be a terrible editor, and I agree. But for the opposite reason than he thought. Not because I would approve everything. I probably wouldn't approve much of anything.
You'd safeguard everything, and you wouldn't.
I would. I'd be too safe.
You'd be too worried about changing what is out there. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you got to take the chance. You got to just go, okay.
And that was my point. I said afterwards to him, I said, I think a very good editor is somebody that understands balance. And I think I would be good at picking an editor, in the sense that I could interview them and say, can you balance out between these two different things? You want to protect the concept and the character, but you want to take risks. And do you have a nice balance of both, where you care enough about the characters, but you know when to spot a good risk and to take it? And that becomes a tricky balance. And I think that's what good editors are. They're the ones that understand when to put the thumbs up and say, go ahead. So would I be good at that position? I'm not looking to do that position. I think if I was seeking it out and that was something I really wanted to do with myself, could I do it? Obviously I wouldn't start at DC. You would start somewhere else and do that. And they're not looking for editors. They're not looking for people like me for that. So I'm not even entertaining that thought about what it would take to be an editor. I would love to talk to an editor, though.
Yeah, because I'm really curious about that. What exactly they do? Because I have a general understanding and a general idea behind the job, but like the day-to-day, what are they doing?
I would love to talk to an editor and a letterer.
Yeah.
So if anybody, knows what any of our creator fans that listen that would be interested. I don't want somebody who doesn't want to do our show. Yeah. If you're a letterer and you happen to listen to our show when you're doing lettering, I would love to have you on, because I appreciate what the job of a colorist is now so much because of the great colorists that have come on and educated us. When Bob Wyacek came on as an inker and started educating, if you're an inker and you're out there and you want to come on and talk inking, give us, shoot us an email. I'd love to have you on here. I only want people on that want to come on, though. And I don't mean that in the sense that we don't want people. It's just we're more of a, celebrating and enjoying and embracing comics. I want to talk about the comics. So if you want to come on and talk comics and talk about your job, and, we can kind of get into what it is that you do and you're excited about talking about it, we would love to have you on the show. If you just listen to the podcast, just listen to the podcast. But I would love to have somebody who is really excited to come on to tell us about what it's like to be an editor or associate editor or assistant editor, whatever that capacity looks like. Tell us a little bit about what that job's like, because I'm a fan. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear what that role is like, and we can talk about what that experience is like, and we can talk about the comics that you work on and really kind of delve in and have a good time with those. But if anybody knows somebody that would be interested in doing that, we'd love to have you. But if not, we'll just, keep doing what we do. I know, it's just kind of an interesting comment that he brought up, because I had to think about it today. I'm like, would I be a good editor? And I'm like, well, why wouldn't I be? And I think I would be at the present state I'm in, I would be an awful editor, because I don't want to give up the fanboy side of me. I've had this my whole life, and that's what comics have always been. From my childhood, those bad days that you have at school, where things just aren't going right. Comics were my refuge. Comics are still my refuge. They've always been that for me, and that's why people are, they keep trying to say, well, Sean, don't you hate this or don't you dislike that? No, this is what my experience is, and I think there's people out there that have that similar experience, and if you're not, I want people to find the comics that give you what they give me. So that's kind of why we podcast. Like, people ask, why do you podcast? This is why. I love this. This gives me so much joy that I want people to find the books that will give them that. Don't have to be the ones that I read, the ones that give me that, but I'm hoping that you change your stack up so you get this, because this is what the medium's all about. It really is. It's a great medium. It's an entertainment joy. And there are so many great comics out there. You should get this. But that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm not trying to break into comics. And no, I don't, I wouldn't be good in any position in comics. There were times as a kid where I entertained being a writer because I have no artistic talent. And, the honest truth is, in order to be a really good writer, you have to have a passion for it. And you have to write all the time. And you have to write different kinds of things all the time. And you have to really delve into and read a lot of different kinds of source material to kind of get into what writing's like and all that. I've never had the motivation to take it far enough that I would even think that I even have a shot at it. So, I mean, that's a dream that's been so long abandoned. Now I'm just enjoying the ride, and I'm just having excitement and all that, and that's kind of who I am, and I'm happy with that. And how cool is that? Life's good. But I mean, that's it's interesting. People talk about why you podcast. All of us podcast for different reasons. I think there's some overlap in why we do it. We want to get messages across, but this is what we do. I mean, this is why is our show so positive? Because this is my experience. All right. Jim, there's one more thing I want to shout out, and I wasn't sure where to shout this out on the show, but I want to shout out in the Speeding Bullets segment because I'd like to put it in a segment of the show. Because we had a fan and friend of the show, Bradley Lange, who has a website. It's called www.guttertreasure.com. And I'm always interested. He's got a friend of his who's an artist called Gene Ocampo, and the two of them have been working together on their own comic strip called Psychologic, and they're also doing a fan-produced Batman Joker story called Gotham. They've been doing on there. The artwork is really sharp. I'm always interested in fan-produced stuff where you see people who just talking about people who are interested and really have the passion to break into comics. These are a couple of guys who, they're trying to get their names out there and hopefully do I think he mentioned that they're considering a Zuda submission or something like that. But this is always fun for me to see these websites and see what people are doing because I don't have this kind of talent. So I'm always enjoying watching fan art and fan stories. And I think that's an interesting way to practice your medium and get in there. But they've got their own strip, too, called Psychologic that you're going to want to check out, too, besides Gotham. So, they're doing original characters as well as taking characters that are tried and true and doing kind of their own flavor and thing with it as well. So it's guttertreasure.com. Gutter Treasure's one word. It'll be in the show notes. Check them out. Because, and anybody, please, don't hesitate to send me stuff like that because I love shouting that stuff out. I felt bad because I get so behind on emails, during the course of a week as I'm prepping for the next episode. And so if you got an email that you've sent me, don't be afraid to send it to me again if I haven't responded to you and it's something that, like, guys, I want to red flag you on this. It's not that I don't care. It's that between trying to keep up with the email, trying to keep up with Facebook, with MySpace, with the forum, we got voicemails now. I go to voicemails first because it's an audio medium, which we are, and it's an easy chance for Jim and I to throw them on quickly on the show and to be able to talk about them and interact with them. So that's why I go to them first. It's not that I don't care about forum threads or things like that or emails. I care about all of it, and you see that I try to respond to as many of them as possible. There's just only so many hours in a day in between my full-time job and trying to get the next episode out to you guys. I can't always respond to everything, but I do care about all of them. So please keep sending them. If you feel like I missed something that you really wanted me to note, you're not bugging me, send it to me again. Say, dude, I'm here. Look at me. And really, that you need to do that with me just because of the fact that we really, just get so hectic and get so many emails and get so bogged down with stuff that I want to note things like this, guttertreasure.com, whenever I can, where I can help people out and get a shout out to something that people are doing that are show themed. I want to start, and I've been meaning to do this, a Friends of the Show section on the website. I've been talking about it. I'm going to try to do it over the Thanksgiving break if I can get to it, just to set up a page where it's a placeholder where people then can say, Sean, I saw that you finally have this up. Put my stuff up there. Because I really do think there's friends of ours who listen to the show or that we've met at cons or things like that I'd really like to be able to have a section where people can click on it and easily get to their stuff. And I haven't had time to do it, and that's really the honest answer to it, but I'm going to try to get to it over the next couple of weeks. But this is part of the reason why, because of cool stuff like this. So, Bradley, thank you so much for your patience, and for he had to send me a second email. It's a great example of where I just, I goofed. Admittedly, I goofed, and it's the art's very cool, the story's very cool.
Okay, I'll check it out.
Joker fans right now, it's a cool Joker story, so check it out. He's got the first. It's a 5-page preview of the fan comic that they're working on. So it's a fan comic and that type of thing. So check it out and take a look at it. It's cool stuff.
To the Batmobile. Let's go.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
You're ready to move up.
Jim and I were just talking about this, and I'm like, dude, why are we talking about this on the show?
Yeah, well, I had a couple Justice League Unlimited characters that I got, and I got them at the Super Show, at the CGS Super Show, and they've been sitting in the box. Of course, I don't open the boxes, and I'm like, I don't want to, I want to, and so I finally did, break them open. I put them up on the shelf.
Which ones did you get again?
I have Green Arrow and Martian Manhunter.
Cool.
And the Martian Manhunter is like a collector plaque, so it's got that stand that you put them in, and when you get all the characters, they spell out Justice League. So now I have Martian Manhunter.
So he's the
and
only
an
one
AG.
from that series,
right?
Okay.
So I'm looking at it, and it took me about 10 seconds looking at it, and I go, son of a gun, I'm now going to have to get the full set just so I can have the whole collection.
Because of the base.
Right, because of the base spells out Justice League when you have them all. So at the cons, you guys are going to see me looking through action figures going, no, okay, I have that one. Oh, I need this one. Okay, is this a special base? Yeah, it is. Okay.
I'm that way too, though. It's one of the reasons why, like, people are like, why don't you buy more figures or statues and stuff like that? Because the problem is I'm psychotic. I can't buy just one. And it's, like, I get that way with collected comics. Like, I try to cut back on the collected comics that I'm buying, but then they'll release, like, Brainiac and stuff like that, like my favorite storylines, like Wonder Woman. I'm buying all Gail's issues monthly.
Yeah, I know.
You guys hear me talk about her stuff on the show constantly. You know I love Gail. So, obviously, I'm getting her stuff as it comes out. I'm buying the hardcovers of her frickin' Wonder Woman run. Again, so I'm buying her stuff.
It too, so it's like,
but
what
you know
the
why
heck?
am I buying it? Because I'm like, oh, well, you know what? I'm going to reread this stuff over and over again because I do. I read her Birds of Prey run. I bought all that in trade. So, I'm buying this in trade again. I bought her all New Adam stuff in trade. I've got Secret Six, the original miniseries in trade. It's like everything she does. Rose and Thorn's not in trade.
I know.
How do I know? I looked.
Right.
So I mean, it's funny. I'm going back and collecting, as much of her stuff in collected editions. But I'm like, oh, now they're releasing her stuff in hardcover. And inevitably it's going to be released in trade because they're releasing the hardcover. It'll come out like a few months later in trade. But then I'm like, but that hardcover's so nice with the slip jacket and stuff like that. And I'm like, it's her stuff, and I love it so much that I'm like, well, all right, I'm going to do that. I'll say right now, if anybody from DC's, Gail, if you hear this, or if anybody from DC hears this, I will buy hardcovers of Secret Six.
In a heartbeat. Without even batting an eye or hesitation.
Yes. And I would like hardcovers of Secret Six.
Yeah.
Versus the trade. I'll buy the trade. If they're going to only release it in trade, I'll buy the trade. But I want hardcovers of Secret Six. That would be cool. Ideally, I like Nicholas Hart so much. Oh, yeah. I want absolute Secret
Absolutely,
Six.
dude. I was just about to say that.
I really do. I really want, I'm loving that. I would love to see that art blown up because her artwork really is just stunning. But I'll settle for hardcovers.
Yeah.
I'll take the trade if I've got no choice. But I want collected Secret Six. I really do. Because I'll read that. It's so messed up. I'm already reading it over and over again. That is a messed up book.
It's wonderful that it's messed up.
It's so messed up.
It's that beautifully wonderful thing that you're just like, oh my God, what's next?
But her Wonder Woman run, I didn't hesitate in hardcover.
Yeah.
I literally, the first one, The Circle, when that one came out, I was like, oh, do I want to get this in hardcover? I've been loving the issues. I've got the issues. I'm just going to read those. I got it in hardcover. It is.
I was just going to get the one, just the first initial in hardcover, and I'm not. I'm getting them all.
Well, here's the funny part. My shelves now are so full of hardcovers, I've got specific drawer boxes now that have my hardcovers in them. Because I got no room for them on shelves anymore. So that is a nice thing, though, with these comic-sized ones. They fit nicely in there. So now my shelves are reserved for the ones that don't fit. It's sick.
Yes, it is a sickness, man.
This is a creepy hobby because you can't stop. I'm like a fish on a hook. I literally do. There's times where I think, like at nighttime when I'm sleeping, I don't realize it, but I'm afraid I'm going to kick my wife open because I probably sputter around like a fish on a hook.
Once again, another visual. I didn't want to know. I don't want these, dude.
I'm waiting for the picture of me, like, sputting around in bed.
Please.
Wait,
please.
me on a fish. Wait, me on a fish.
Yeah.
My head on a fish.
You could be like the incredible Mr. Limpet, you know?
Jim, we're going to close out, just because of the fact that we are on a time constraint right now. We're going to close out the show with listener voicemails where you and I respond to them, but that's going to be our blooper reel this episode. We're going to definitely respond to them, so we got our commentary with the voicemails, but I definitely want to close that out so that way I can try to edit this together and get it out tonight, because it's Thursday and you and I are still recording because of my crazy schedule. I want to say this, as long as we're doing the show closing right now, Jim and I, our concentration and focus is trying to get you guys 4 episodes a month. Between both of our work schedules with meetings and things like that, my teaching schedule sometimes gets absolutely crazy where I have meetings after work that I didn't know about. And, you know, it's not complaining about my job or anything like that. I don't mean it that way. It's more of an explanation to you guys as to why, you know, we'll go weekly for a while, and then, you know, we'll release an episode, and then we'll release one 7 days later. Then all of a sudden the next week it's like 8 or 9 days. Please check the forum and the website. I try to my best to make sure that I update you guys as soon as I know what my schedule is, so you know when the show's coming. We're still going to have 4 episodes in November, so it's cool. We got our monthly content in. And I was looking back. You and I did that bit for a while. We went every 10 days, and we were doing longer episodes. Did you notice that we went back to doing it weekly, and we said we're going to do longer episodes, so you're getting the same amount of content from us? We never shortened the episodes.
Yeah, I know.
I was like saying, when did we get long episodes like this? When did that start? I went back and looked because I was trying to make sure, I'm like, am I going to get in 4 in November? Because that was my goal. You know, to say we've got to get in. We're a weekly podcast. Even if we go outside these days, I want to make sure listeners get 4 episodes. We think of you guys a lot, just so you know. I was looking back, and I'm like, I've got to get a 4th episode in November. Are we going to be able to reach that goal? What do we have to do it? So I actually thought about that, even because I know that our schedule this month's been a little erratic. But I looked back, and we stopped doing that somewhere around May. We went back to, we made the state, we're going to go back to being weekly. We're going to get you 4 episodes a month again. We've been doing that nonstop since May. We never took back aside from a couple episodes where we went a little shorter because of our schedules, we have been doing these longer episodes weekly, or, you know, close to that. 4 episodes a month since May. We've been doing that. What's wrong with us? We did one omnibus one on the Dark Knight that was like 8 hours long that had our biggest downloads yet.
Yeah, we're sick.
No,
we're sick.
And you know
it's
what?
Wonderful.
The people that listen to us are just as sick as we are.
I know. It's
and
outstanding.
we love you. That's why we love you guys, because obviously you guys are cut from the same cloth. But honestly, we are committed to getting you a 4th episode in November, and we will do it. So we're going to meet that goal. And I want to thank you guys for your patience, because every time I've posted on the forum and I post on the website, and when I get forum responses, people are really supportive. And I want to tell you that means a lot, because we know you guys are there waiting for the episodes. We know that it matters to you that we're coming out, and that we try to get them out in as timely a fashion as possible. But your support in, like, understanding if we're a day or 2 late because of different things that we're doing is really important to us. We're trying our best in the fact that this really isn't our full-time job, but it's like a second full-time job. It really is. And it's fun for us. This, to me, today was a joy. We recorded a lot more tonight than we intended to, because there were things that we wanted to talk about, because we wanted to share them with you. Jim and I could have stopped, and I could have been editing while Jim and I had this conversation, but the important part was these topics we wanted to share with you. We're putting on listener voicemails as our blooper reel on there because we want to hear what you think. We want to get what you think on this show. So it's really an issue of you guys drive a lot of what we do and our decisions to come back and keep doing this, because we have fun interacting with you. So I want to thank you guys for your patience and your support and understanding in our schedules and all that. And I want to thank our sponsors for this episode, speaking of people to thank. DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Batman and the Outsiders, the Snare trade paperback by Chuck Dixon, with art by Julian Lopez, Carlos Rodriguez, and Bit, with a cover by Jim Calafiore. It collects Batman and the Outsiders 6 through 10. The Outsiders' latest mission ends up stranding one of their own in space, while the rest of the team fights for their lives behind the Chinese borders. But can the struggling team learn to rely on its biggest loose cannon? Regularly $14.99, 40% off, only $8.99. Green Arrow Black Canary number 16, regularly $2.99, 40% off, only $1.79. Don't forget our In-Stock Trades Book of the Month. chosen by Simulated Stereo, which will be in, not next episode, but the one after, 142. Doom Patrol Volume 2, The Painting That Ate Paris. Collects 26 to 34. Regularly $19.95, 40% off, 47% off, I'm sorry, because they're supporting us. Only $10.57. Thank you, DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com for your support of the show. And Jim, Top Bullets, what is it? We're doing it next week.
We're doing Top Bullets next week, but you still got some time to send in for September and October.
Right.
It's a way for you all to get involved with the show. You send in your top 5, top 7, top whatever list of the books you're reading, the books you're raging on about. Maybe a little something, why you want to talk about this. I will contabulate the list together to make one master control. Sean and I will comment on it. Then we'll give our own lists, and we'll just have a nice meaty discussion about comics. Send your top bullets to senseiofwhatnot at gmail.com. Again, that is senseiofwhatnot at gmail.com.
Just so you know, that's going to be our last Top Bullets until 2009, because in December, you and I are going to do our Raging Oscars. And we're going to do it a little different than we attempted last year, because it really just became too big for us the way we did it. We're going to go through and do the DC Universe the way we did it last time, and do it in December. So we're going to do the Raging Oscars for this past year. So it'll be all the books that were released in 2008 will be eligible for it. We're going to do kind of like what we do with Top Bullets, where we're going to do honorable mentions for stuff in Wildstorm and Vertigo. So we will mention both, but we aren't going to go to the same detail with Wildstorm and Vertigo, just because, in all honesty, our show is more DC Universe themed. It tends to be where we main focus, and we tend to always do nod to favorite things from Wildstorm and Vertigo, and we're going to do the same thing at Raging Oscars. The other reason why is not because we don't care about Wildstorm and Vertigo. We just never got to it at all last year, because we just got busy with other topics and things like that. So rather than ignore it, I want to make sure we at least honor them on some level, because I've been enjoying a number of things from Wildstorm, a number of things from Vertigo. One of the things that I'm really enjoying right now from Wildstorm is the Top 10 Season 2, I should say, which has a different writer, but wonderful art from Gene Ha. And we will be talking about that series as it goes on, because I'm definitely going to do it in a Speeding Bullets segment, or maybe we'll do a full-blown segment on the show, because I'm a big fan of Gene's art. Back when we talked about his fill-in issue on Justice League, I got to share some of that, but we haven't really had a chance to delve back into him again, and I do want to talk about Top 10 Season 2. But we will be doing the Raging Oscars this year. We're going to do it a little bit differently. It'll be the same format for the DC Universe, but we'll do kind of like what we do with Top Bullets, a little bit of a smaller look at Wildstorm and Vertigo, but I don't want to leave them out like we did last year. I don't want to do that crazy omission again. So we'll get them in, and we'll do it like in sometime in December. We'll talk about it. Maybe we'll wrap up the year with that. Maybe it'll be our last episode of the year or something. I don't know. We'll see how it pans out.
See, yeah.
Because that takes us a long time to put together, but we'll definitely do that for the end of the year. It'll either be the last episode in December, maybe the first in January. So there you go. We will see you next week. And listen for the listeners on the end.
Bye.
Hey, Sean and Jim. This is Jim Dietz from the Gypsy Cafe in Pittsburgh and from the Legion of Dudes podcast. How's it going, guys? Good to talk to you. I've been kind of busy lately. I'm just catching up with the podcast today. Wanted to shout out a great new book I got called Kirby, King of Comics. I don't know if you've mentioned it on the show. I haven't heard you talk about it. But any fan of comic art will really enjoy this book. It's a hardbound overview of the entire life of Jack the King Kirby, from his early days with Timely and Atlas on through the Marvel years, the DC years, and his later works as well. It's a great Christmas gift for any comic fan on your list. It's a beautiful edition written by Mark Vanier, who is himself many years comic veteran. He's written for DNA Agents, off the top of my head, and a few other things. But I can't say enough good things about this book. I got it for my birthday a few weeks ago, and gosh darn it, it's probably my favorite coffee table book that I probably have ever owned in my life. It's just there's a beautiful presentation, really nice place of unseen art, famous Kirby art, anecdotes, interviews with his family. It's just the ultimate Kirby resource. So I just wanted to shout that out. I'm ranting and raving about it just because it is so nice. And I'm sure it should be at the top of any geek's Christmas list who enjoys comics and comic art form in any way, especially now with the whole revitalization of the New Gods and their prominence in the DCU. It's cool to see this flashing back to the man who created them. Also, I wanted to shout out you guys because I love your podcast. And I just wanted to get your comments on, first of all, the upcoming Brave and the Bold cartoon. I don't know if you're aware of this, if you're going to be doing an episode on it or what have you, but it looks awesome. Looks really fun. It's like a mix of the Diniverse and Silver Age style. It looks really cool, and I hope it's as cool as it looks. And I also wanted to get your opinion on the recent cancellations in the Bat Universe titles. I heard that Robin, Nightwing, and Manhunter are all going to be taken off the slate. If you give me some comments and feedback on your end on that. Thanks, guys. Keep on raging, and I'll keep on listening. Bye-bye.
He thinks like us.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where the Kirby, that was one, we shouted that out as an in-stock trades order
Yeah.
a while ago. That was one that we were both interested in for that. I ended up ordering it. I have not read it yet because I've got so many things that I've ordered. I order a lot of things that are on the back burner. But now that he said that, that's going to rise up the stack as something I want to start looking at. It's fun. I get excited for winter break and things like that because that's an opportunity for me at least to have some time to actually sit down and read things that are collected. Where I can actually sit down and really spend some serious time reading them because we got to keep up with a lot of things for the show.
Yeah.
So that drives a lot of times my extra reading. When I do that, I'm trying to read a couple novels now too, just for a change of pace. So it's interesting trying to find time to fit in extra things outside of stuff that you and I are covering for the show. It's not a complaint, it's just a reality. It's funny, the Brave and the Bold cartoon. Yeah, we talked about this one. And it is fun. He's right. It is kind of an interesting marriage of a couple different styles and a couple different tones. So it actually works for that. I'll be curious to see Jim. If you hear this, give us a call back and tell us if you saw it, what you thought of it. Because and it goes for all our listeners. Anybody that hears this, tell us what you thought about the cartoon or different things like that. That's what I like about this part is just hearing people kind of shout out. Like that book was a great example. He's looked at it, he's been reading it, and to hear him talk about it has gotten me excited to read it now. And I love that kind of stuff. The cancellations, the only other one I would add to that is Blue Beetle right now. I think the Batverse ones are story driven.
Yeah.
And I really feel like that's very much the case. But Manhunter and Blue Beetle, it's been sales. Their sales, we did a Manhunter challenge ages ago because we were trying to save that book. And it came back, and not just because of us, because of just a whole bunch of readership writing in. But letter writing campaigns work. So I want to say again, just because he's talking about that, I'm going to write a letter. I like Blue Beetle and Manhunter enough that I'm going to write a letter about both. I'm going to write 2 different letters. I know letters do carry more weight. It's worth writing in about them. If it doesn't say them, at least I feel like I've done my part because I care about the book enough. It's an issue of sales numbers. It's kind of a harsh reality about it. We as fans, we want to see the artistic side, but we forget there's a business end of it a lot of times, and we get mad because of the business end of it. I'm not happy that those books are being canceled at all. I wouldn't go as far as to say I'm mad just because in the sense that I think I'm a little bit more reasonable about the business side now than I've ever been before. But I'm disappointed. Those are 2 books that I enjoy reading every month. Blue Beetle's been fun. Manhunter's been exciting. They're both characters. Like Manhunter, I'm really worried with the cancellation of Birds of Prey. Where's Manhunter going to be?
Yeah,
that's my big concern.
Where are we going to see her? That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, Blue Beetle, I'm less worried about it only because I know he's currently in Titans. If he was off the team, I would be a lot more upset because I wouldn't see him at all. That being said, I really like his solo series. I like the exploration of his girlfriend. Mr. Chibi said it best on the forum. He's got a nice little rant going there, about that cancellation and how that bothers him. And why. And, it's one of those things. I do give DC a lot of credit, though, that they gave both of these books a nice life and really tried to generate a readership for them. It's hard in this market right now in comics. And, I can't imagine what it's like for independent comics trying to make it in this medium when the big 2 have trouble, with books and they've got to cancel them right now. It's a sad state that there's so much competition out there for this medium that people don't get. I think there's people who would enjoy comics that don't give it a shot. Comics aren't for everybody. That's true. Ethan Van Sciver said that at one of the panels. They did that DC versus Marvel panel where the 2 sides were there, and he made the mention of that. And I do think he's got a point there. But I do think there's people that love reading, that love literature, that love art in general. I think there's people that play video games for the graphics, that get blown away by that would love artwork in comics. And I think there's people that play role-playing games and that love role-playing games, especially the people that love the classic text-based role-playing games where there's graphics and it's the Japanese ones that have these strong storylines, but there's lots of text involved, that should be reading comics because it's the same serialized storytelling you get in a role-playing game. So I think that there is audiences that aren't reading comics that haven't been tapped yet. And I don't know what the answer is to get them to give it a shot, or what the books are to get them to give it a shot, but I do think that there are, and that's where I get frustrated at cancellations like Blue Beetle and Manhunter. Not because of the fact that I blame the company or point the finger. I just think that we're on the cusp of finding a way, and I don't know what it is, if it's trying to release comics in a digital medium or something. I don't know what that is. I don't know what the success is for the Watchmen motion comic, which is really entertaining. Have you seen this yet?
No, I haven't. Other than that, no.
Because I got a subscription to that on iTunes. It's very cool, and I know that they're branching off and they're going to do more of them. It's an interesting way to try and reach a different audience, and I hope that it's reaching people that maybe have never, touched comics before in a new way. But I think we're on the cusp of finding some way to get people in. I hope. With the way the market is right now, and I'm not talking about in comics, I'm talking about right now with budgets in the world, it's hard, I'm sure, probably to try and get people to try comics because price point, I think, is a
you got to get them in. It's the bringing them in and get them in.
Get them hooked.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that's, when I see a Blue Beetle and a Manhunter cancel, I get very disappointed because top quality books that on quality alone should have an audience that they're the type of books that would bring people in if people could just read them. So, I don't know. It's a good question.
Sean, Jim, Don Sanderson, Orlando, Florida. Just finished listening to episode 139, and I really appreciate the fact that you guys interview creators. The interview with Freddie, both of them that I've heard, just really enjoyable, and love to hear the creators' insights. And basically how they put together the books that we love to read. So that was a lot of fun, and thank you, Freddie E. Williams, for sharing with us in the latest podcast. I'm currently reading some new books as opposed to the typical JLA-type JSA and Final Crisis and Trinity-type books. I picked up Secret Six, and I'm loving that. And I'm also picking up the Superman and Batman with werewolves and vampires book. Two of my favorite things in literature, superheroes and monsters. It's a pretty cool book. So I'd advise you to check it out, and love to maybe have you guys do a little synopsis of that book as well. And then one other thing that I did about a week and a half ago, I got the Birds of Prey from 2006 television series, and I watched all of the episodes over like 2.5 days. And I tell you what, it is really a shame that series was not picked up for longer than the one season, because it's a pretty terrific show, right up there with Smallville. My girlfriend said she loved the girl power in it. They took some, liberties with the DC continuity, but it was still a pretty fun show. And incorporated Shiva and Black Canary and Clayface, and it was just a pretty cool thing. So definitely, if you get a chance, pick up the Birds of Prey Season 1 DVD, and I'm actually considering doing a podcast review on at least one or two of the episodes that I could submit to you guys. But anyway, always love what you're doing. Thanks so much. As we're approaching Thanksgiving, you guys are one of the things that I'm thankful for, and especially, I'm thankful for my comic books, which keep me sane in this crazy time we're living in. Anyway, you guys take good care. See you later.
I love Don. That's what it's one of those things where all of a sudden we get a voicemail comment that hits on something. I love when people like geek out about things.
Yeah.
It's one of the themes of the show, and I love when listeners do it. We have friends that do it. I've always liked that about Don. He sent us voicemail comments before, and they've always, had that kind of, he's been jazzed and energized by something, and it's been outstanding. Birds of Prey is one of, did you watch that series?
I watched it. I enjoyed it.
Did you watch the whole thing?
Yeah. I liked it. I thought it was cool. I was kind of, I wasn't surprised when they canceled it just because they didn't. I blame TV executives that they didn't put it in the proper place. It should have been right behind Smallville.
Yeah, 2 hours of power.
Yeah, and they didn't do that. They wanted to spread it out. Then they put it up against Buffy or Angel. One of the two they put it up against. Yeah, they put it up against
Tuesday. I think it was on Tuesdays, if I'm right.
And I'm
I think it was against Angel.
You know what? Don't go up against Angel. He had too strong of a thing going in, especially when this was coming out. That was executives made bad choices.
And you got to figure there too, what you're doing when you're putting it up against like an Angel or a Buffy, you're figuring that's your target audience. So you're trying to compete for the audience, which always means you're going to divide it.
Right.
And why wouldn't you put it on a different day in a different time slot where you have an opportunity to then have that audience follow that? And Smallville was kind of like the no-brainer. Why wouldn't you just follow that? And then they could have done some crossovers. The problem I have with that series, too, is that I agree with what he's saying. I would have liked to have seen a second season. Because I think they started building an interesting foundation. I don't think it was quite there yet. Like, I enjoyed it. I didn't miss an episode. Never felt like I wasted my time watching it. But if you remember Smallville's first season, remember how it was like very formula? It was Clark versus Kryptonite,
Meteor Freak.
And then, the resolution would be Clark would defeat Meteor Freak or help Meteor Freak see that they were doing something wrong, and everything would end happily ever after. I enjoyed that the first season. Some great moments. Honestly, Ma and Pa Kent kept a lot of that going for me during that time. I really enjoyed John Schneider in his role as Pa Kent, and Martha's relationship with Clark as well. I thought that Ned O'Toole was great in that, but I really thought that was some of the strengths of the series at that point. It wasn't until later seasons that Smallville, I felt, really started to pick up and get more into like a Superman, really strong Superman story. I think Birds of Prey had potential. I think, second, third season, we could have started to see some really interesting things out of it. I liked how they would tease a little bit of Batman in it and all that stuff. I think there was really a lot of potential for that to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And
someone dropped the ball.
Yeah, it was really... scheduling, I think, was really more than anything else. I don't think it was necessarily a bad series. I don't think it was as good as it could be.
Yeah.
I think it had the potential to grow to be something a little bit more like Smallville. Because it was darker. It had a darker tone to it that kind of fit the Bat universe, and I think we could have seen some interesting things. Ultimately, though, the question is, would they have let them have Bruce Wayne? At some point, you would have had to have him pop in. I liked the whole nod to Earth 2.
Yeah, see, I wouldn't have done Bruce Wayne.
Okay.
I would have done Dick Grayson. And I would have brought in Dick Grayson. Mm-hmm. And had him come in as not as a superhero, have him be like he's got a bad heart or something, so he can't be Nightwing, but he's in Gotham and he becomes the new mayor of Gotham. So you have him interacting with Diana, him interacting, with Huntress, and just being him there. But then maybe you'd see him talking.
Did you say Diana or Dinah?
I said Diana, and I meant to say Dinah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to even...
I know.
I was like, just register me. I'm like, wait a minute, what are you...
Yeah, there was a slip there. But, but even, like, have him talking on the phone to somebody, like, yeah, I'm watching her, okay. And you figure, okay, he's got to be talking to Bruce there, and just the whole type of, style. That's how I would have played it, but...
And they made some liberties with Black Canary's daughter.
Right.
And having be the daughter and go that route, which, kind of plays into comics continuity in the sense that, there's... it's supposed to be a mantle that was handed down, and that does work into comics, but they changed, like, the power set a little bit and things like that. But it worked for me. It did work for me, and I enjoyed it, and I liked it, and I would have liked to have seen some more of it. It just needed, like, I agree, like, when Don was saying it needed a second season, I'm like, yes, it did, because I wanted to see where they could go with it. And I had a feeling like they needed that, they didn't have their season yet where it really hit. But, if you look back at, let's talk about Buffy. First season of Buffy, the same thing. I enjoyed the first season of Buffy, but really it started to branch out in the second, third season as it really started to get going. Same thing with Angel. I think they were series that didn't get their voice until they got going. And I think that's true of a lot of these series that are, sci-fi themed. I think, once they get the introductions out of the way and get introduced to a theme and tone, then they really start to go places because they're done with all the origin-related stuff. And so, I don't know, that would have been an interesting one. Thank you for the comments on the Freddie interview.
Hey, Sean and Jim, it's Ian from Comic Timing. As you can probably tell from my voice, considering that you've heard it so many times over the past couple of years. Just actually wanted to get this in here so you guys could be able to maybe discuss it on the show. I know that DC's gone through a lot of cancellations in the past couple of weeks, and I'm curious as to what your take is on all this. Most specifically, Blue Beetle being canceled was only a week before it aired on Cartoon Network Brave and the Bold. That is, he had almost an entire episode of the show devoted to the character of Jaime Reyes. And I find it a little bit odd that that's when they decided to cancel the book, considering that this is giving the character a brand new exposure that it might not have gotten before, perhaps exposing it to, kids and, teenagers and adults alike that might have been tuning in that had not known the character of Jaime Reyes before. Now, I understand he's going to be in Teen Titans, but still, it's kind of weird how that played out. It also kind of upsets me a little bit that DC's publishing department doesn't seem to be in, direct connection with the other departments, either at Warner Brothers or at DC itself, because you would think that the animation department would be, letting them know, you might want to hold off on this for a little bit so we can double exposure for both the publishing wing and the animation wing, specifically, but that's not the way it turned out. So I'm curious what you guys take is on that. Also, that, Birds of Prey and Nightwing and all those other books, Robin, all quote-unquote canceled due to Batman R.I.P., and the news coming out today that Adventure Comics is going to be starting back up and that Superman's going to be taking a trip into space. Is it just me, or is it the 90s all over again? Batman's either dead or no longer in the Cal. Superman's going off into space. It feels like it's all been done before. And I don't know. I mean, I'm enjoying Batman R.I.P., it's not to say that I'm not enjoying the books that are coming out right now. I'm not quite sure if this is exactly the right way for DC to go, getting rid of the Bruce Wayne under the cowl, right after a big movie like Dark Knight, and getting Superman out of the cowl, considering what happened the last time I did that with Action Comics. It didn't exactly turn out well sales-wise. So, anyway, I think I'm just going to start rambling, so I better stop talking now. I'll listen in to see what you guys think, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.
Yeah, definitely listen to Comic Timing. Ian's been a long-time friend of the show. I wouldn't be, very similar to how I talk about Comic Geek Speak, I wouldn't be podcasting if it wasn't for Ian Levinstein. After we met at the Comic Geek Speak show, he was kind enough to have me on Geek Speak, his old Geek Speak show, and we did a cartoon episode, and he gave me the bug. Comic Geek Speak did through audio comments. They were kind enough to let audio comments come on. It's one of the reasons why on this show that I try to get as much listener content on any episode that we can. It's one of the reasons why I like voicemails now, because it seems like you and I are able to get them on every episode, which is, to me, I love this. This is fun
cool
for me. But to touch on a couple of his points, one of the things that I think is, and this isn't a fault of DC Comics, I think it's Warner Brothers in some ways needs to restructure their communication. They need to take a look at what Marvel's doing that's successful in their movies. Because I think Marvel's movies have been so successful right now because of the strong ties to the comic end, because Marvel's running that. Now, the problem with DC, it's not DC's problem. DC's the comic company. And they've talked about this multiple times at the conventions. They are a comic publishing company. They don't control the cartoons. They don't control the direct DVD releases. They don't control the movies. And there's, obviously anytime you've got different publishing arms or different arms like that are controlled by whole different companies within a larger company, it's, hard to get that communication there. And I do share his frustration in the sense that would Blue Beetle have gotten a new readership? Here's my problem, though, and this is something that I think is a problem not just with DC, I think it's with comics in general. And I don't know what the answer is on this, on how to get this the case. I would love to see comic companies, when they work it out with movie studios and television studios and things like this, work a deal in there where there has to be advertisement for the comics. There's never an advertisement for the comics. Like, if you liked Blue Beetle, you can read him. I mean, wouldn't that have been great after Brave and the Bold? I know you're talking about lots of money in dollars, but even just a picture of the Blue Beetle comic available at your comic shops airing on there for 5 seconds. Something, to show that these books are available. Or, wait, here's a good one. I hope to God, they're making a Batman Brave and the Bold comic.
Yeah.
I pre-ordered it because I'm liking what Johnny DC's doing, so I like the cartoon. I actually pre-ordered it before I saw the cartoon, but I figured, okay, I'm liking what they're doing so far, and I'm sad that I missed the Johnny DC stuff the first time around. Like Justice League, I jumped on it really late, and that was a great comic that tied in with that cartoon. So this is a great example of where I would love to see that at the end of, the Dark Knight movie. It would have been cool to see, like, a trailer
for
before
Batman R.I.P. in Dark Knight. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of times where they're dropping and I blame it on the Warner Brothers on the movie side that they don't think their executives aren't thinking outside the box.
Well, they're the parent company of the smaller company. Why aren't they doing that?
So I don't know. We have this huge hype going on towards Blackest Night and Green Lantern. Mm-hmm. Why isn't there a Green Lantern movie? People have been clamoring about it.
They did, just so you know, they did greenlight that. I guess because of the success at Marvel. If you take a look on the net, I guess Warner Brothers has been pushing now, doing more solo movies. Now, here's the problem. They greenlighted it. Wonder Woman was greenlighted ages ago.
Right.
We've seen what's happened with that. We haven't seen anything. Flash was greenlighted for a certain amount of time.
We haven't seen anything. Greenlighting doesn't mean anything. Right. It's when it's actually in production.
Yeah.
That's when it means something.
And we're dealing with unfortunately, this is how Hollywood works. Things get greenlighted, and hopefully if all the pieces flow together, the movie will actually take place. It's one of the advantages Marvel has. And they were brilliant in their sense that DC doesn't have this option because they are owned by a parent company, so they don't have the option to just say, hey, let's take our movies under our own arm. They can't do it. So it's really something, and we've got to, as fans, realize you can't blame DC Comics for this, in the sense that they don't have a whole lot of control over that. They really don't. It's an unfortunate thing. But even the Marvel films, in all honesty and fairness, the Marvel films, except their DVD releases, do a really nice job of showcasing the comics. The Batman Begins did, though, too. Like they did. They had some. The DVD release does. I would just like to see that in the theater, because you figure there's going to be a drop off in the people that purchase it versus the people that see it in the theater. Look how many people put their butts in their seats for Dark Knight.
Yeah.
Now, not every one of them is going to buy the DVD. Some of them are going to pre-order the extra collector's edition with the motorcycle in it, which you can guess why I know.
Because you ordered that.
Yeah, it looks cool. Yeah. So I ordered that thing. I don't know why I needed it, but I did. But see, that's the kind of stuff, like, I would like to see that stuff in the theater, though, and that really is, I don't want to get off that topic, because that's really important to me. I don't know. There's not an easy answer. I think my frustration comes from the fact that I hate seeing good books canceled. Blue Beetle's a good book that's been canceled. Manhunter's a good book that's been canceled. The Adventure Comics thing, I'm going to disagree with him to a certain extent on that, because how many comic panels have we been to where people were clamoring for, when are we finally going to get one Legion? And I think, Ian, what that is, and you may disagree with me, that's okay, I think that's in response to the fact that they're finally going to give us one Legion, and we are going to see that one Legion spinning out of this. And my personal hypothesis is that Legion's going to be comprised of members of all three.
Yeah, that's what I think too. And it's funny because the return of the '90s, like, oh, okay, well, I missed a lot of those comic book eras. I'll bring it back. But yeah, it's, I don't know. I'm looking forward to some changes. It's one of those things where we were talking earlier about what's going to happen to the to Robin, what's going to happen to Nightwing, and there's that. I'm a little bit nervous, but I am on the other side of it. I am a little bit excited. I am looking forward to saying, okay, what are they going to do this time?
I'm more excited about that. Like, I agree with his sentiments when you're saying cancellations where. See, I'm okay with cancellations where it's story driven, and obviously it's going to be sales driven in the sense that we're canceling it, but it looks like we're keeping. Hopefully the same, if not very similar, creative teams, because it seems like the writing team's coming around. I haven't heard anything about the art yet, and I'm just kind of waiting and seeing. I'm going to kind of lean back and wait and see what are these books going to look like, who's going to be on them. We're bringing in Greg Rucka as well, so it looks like we've got a big plan after Battle of the Cowl for that reason. There's some, he hinted here. Do you see them taking Bruce Wayne out of the cowl? I see Bruce Wayne being Batman.
I see Bruce Wayne as Batman as well. I think when everything is said and done, it will be Bruce Wayne again. Mm-hmm. He'll be a different person, but not, a different inside on the inside. He's going
logically because of what he's gone through. We're going to see an
but
evolution.
It's not going to be it's going to be Bruce Wayne.
And I think it's going to be the same one that we see at the end of R.I.P. that is going to somehow find his way back.
Yeah, he's going to fight his way back, and it's... Yeah, I don't know what the story arc, how it's going to do it, but I have confidence that Bruce is going to come back. And I'm the guy who says he wants to see change in the comics, who wouldn't mind seeing somebody else wear the cowl. I don't see that happening. Bruce Wayne is Batman. Clark Kent is Superman. We're not going to see these, we're not going to see these changes. And it's something that is concrete, written in stone as to who these people are.
When I see solicitations for comics with the creative teams that are currently on Nightwing and Robin on new books, I will be thrilled. I'm right now tentative because I haven't seen that yet, but I'm willing to wait because I haven't seen yet. I know there's books coming out of this. We're doing this Battle for the Cowl. Then obviously after that we're going to get these new books that are going to come out there. And, we got to be honest, and I understand what he's saying about the 90s, and part of this is driven from the 90s, but I don't think it's necessarily a return to the 90s unless we've got, 50 covers that we've got to all buy to interconnect. And, I mean, that's, honestly, we're a collector's market. They're trying to, out of a small group of people, and this is something all, the big two are both guilty of. And but to me, if it's story-driven, which I feel this is, I think we're going to see some relaunches of these titles with the same creative teams, and we're going to see the same quality that we've been seeing in them. That's what's really important. Like, Nightwing's been stellar. So if we see the Nightwing team doing something in the Batverse again, we're going to see another quality book. We see the Robin team, we're going to see another quality book. That's what's important to me. I want to see what Rucka's going to do as well. Right. So I want to see what those books look like when they're solicited and where these characters status quo-wise go before I make my decision on that. Adventure Comics, though, I really do think is stemmed out of, for years now, if you look back, and you can actually hear them podcasted now. Go back and listen to the DC Nation podcast and listen to how many of them people have asked questions about the Legion. When are we finally going to get an answer to which Legion's which? And then, they'll ask, which is your favorite Legion? I think they're trying to find a way to give us a Legion that will please all fans and kind of bring them together and hopefully bring a Legion book together that will satisfy everybody. I'm curious to see what the creative do. I haven't heard anything about the creative team.
No, I haven't heard anything on that.
That's going to be a big deciding factor to me as well. Because I've liked the current Legion book a great deal, but I also enjoy what Johns is doing with Legion. So that becomes an interesting puzzle. I liked what Wade did. I liked how it jumped into what Shooter's been doing. I'm going to be curious to see if they can bring that all together successfully and make it into something that's just as appealing as both of these Legion universes have been.
Right.
That's going to be the key. Can they do it? And that's a wait and see. That's a big wait and see for me.
And one character that we never really talked about with all these cancellations is Misfit. I really hope they don't get rid of her. Because, she could very easily fit into Teen Titans. They're talking about expanding the roster so she can go in there. Black Alice, what's going to happen to her? There's just so many really cool characters that...
The Secret Eight.
Yeah.
They're both Gale characters. Take them back.
Yes. Oh, dude. That would be wonderful.
Give them a book.
Yeah.
I'd read them.
Yeah.
Misfit and Black Alice?
Together? Oh, yeah.
Put them together. I'll read them. Make them a Secret Six backup. Can you tell who I want to write them?
Yeah. And you know what? I firmly agree with you. 100%. Please.
No, you know what, though? I've got to say this. I think they were so well-developed characters that I've really genuinely enjoyed their appearances in the various, writers that we've seen with them. I thought McKeever was finally starting to get a handle on them. They went to Bedard, and I thought Bedard was doing a nice job with them. I liked the Dark Side Club issue with the two of them. I thought it really showcased that they looked back at the original source material, got to understand what how these characters are being created, and they crafted a good story with those characters. So, they can be handled well in other hands. So I would like to see them. Teen Titans, you're right, would be a logical fit for one or both. Whether or not we'll actually see them there, I don't know. But McKeever mentioned at a panel that he actually started to like Misfit by the end of the series. Remember, I don't know if you remember that one.
Yeah, maybe. That'd be cool.
Maybe he'll say, okay, now that she's free, let's put her on Titans, because we haven't seen all the members of Titans yet, so maybe.
And they said it was going to be a huge roster,
like 11, I thought.
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah.
So possibility, I don't know, but if not, Secret 8.
7 or Secret 7, if you only want to bring one of them over,
Well, we got Jeanette, so we've got 6. So.
Right, but if they bring only one over, I'm saying.
I'm greedy.
Well.
I still say they make a nice backup. There's nothing wrong with a good backup story in a book.
True.
Secret 6 could use a backup story. When I'm done, Secret 6 is going to be like 100-page book each month. Secret 6 is going to be like every character in the DC universe, but it's going to be like the Secret 6 team is going to be the main feature, and there's going to be like 27 backups. The world's longest comic.
It's funny, I have more ideas going through my head, and I know I'll just keep feeding into your ideas, but I was thinking, you have the Secret 6
and
on
I
one
really
side,
don't need to be fed.
and then you have another 6. You have the villains and the heroes in one comic. So you have like the Fabulous 12 or whatever you want to call it, but you have the 6 villains and you have the 6 heroes. And naturally, I'm thinking 3 off the top of my head: Oracle, Misfit, Black Alice. Throw them in there. Hey, throw in Manhunter. That's 4. Let's see here. Who else could we have for the 6 heroes? Oof.
I don't know.
Yeah, so
I could keep going.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally meant what I said. By the time I'm done, I'd have her writing the whole universe. But everybody knows I'm Gail Simone happy, so it's. I'd love to see her take on Hawkman. I loved her, Hawk Girl.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. He poses an interesting question, and it's one of those things. I'm not upset because with the Batman stuff, because I do believe this is story driven, and we're going to see the benefit of these creative teams sticking around. That I would be sorely disappointed if we lost either writer right now of Robin or Nightwing on there. Tony Bedard, I'm worried about because I haven't heard anything about him.
Yeah.
And I really do enjoy. I really think his Birds of Prey run was starting to get some steam, and I think that it's a book that I think would have taken off given a little bit more time.
His Joker episode, his Joker issues, and all that stuff.
Yeah, I really liked what he was doing with that.
I was digging that.
Yeah, because he wrote a really fun Joker in there, and I really thought that it was something that we were ready to see. And so I'm really kind of sad to see that book go, because I think that there was more life in that book. But I don't know. It's kind of one of those things. We're in the nature of the beast and it's like I said before. I think we as fans have a tough time separating the business end with the artistic end of comics. What we'd like and what's reality aren't always one and the same. Anyway, that's about it for us.
Nice brief episode for you all.
Brief, yeah.
And I do apologize for if there's Darth Vader breath is coming through on this issue, because I am fighting a episode or whatever. Issue, show, whatever. You know what I mean. Yeah. But I just wanted to apologize ahead of time, because I do have a little bit of a stuffed up nose right now, and that usually escalates the Darth Vader breathing.
There you go. But yeah, boy, we're late, and why don't we give them some content?
There you go.
We will see you in a week, because you'll need a week.
Bye.
That's because we love you guys. So
yeah.
I love it's 10:19. I got to edit this.